Chapter 1090. Chu Xiu wanted to inquire about Dugu Weiwei from Lin Yazi, but unfortunately, he also failed. Lin Yazi smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu, I've really never heard of this Dugu Weiwei's name. Among the powerhouses I know, there isn't a single person who can match up to him. Of course, it's also possible that I'm ignorant and ill-informed. Actually, the history of my 9 Phoenix Sword sect isn't that long. It's only a little more than 400 years and 3 generations. My great-grandfather was a disciple of a large sect in the northern region, the mysterious Heaven Realm. Due to some kind of accident, he came to the eastern region's Fonglin County and settled down. My grandfather's talent was too poor, and he didn't even completely inherit the martial Dao of my Lin clan before he passed away. It was only during my father's generation that the 9 Phoenix Sword sect was truly established. Therefore, I know very little about these secrets of the pugilistic world. Brother Chu, if you ask me about some of the current matters of the pugilistic world, then it's fine. But 500 years ago, I really couldn't help you even if I wanted to." Hearing Lin Yazi's words, Chu Xiu didn't continue to ask if he knew about Ning Xuanji. Even someone with a personality like Dugu Weiwei couldn't leave his name on a large scale, let alone Ning Xuanji. However, Chu Xiu felt that something was wrong. With Dugu Weiwei's personality and strength, he would definitely be as dazzling as the sun wherever he went. Ning Xuanji might not have left behind such a great reputation, but as long as Dugu Weiwei appeared in this world, he definitely wouldn't be a nobody. The 9 Phoenix Sword sect was too small, so they might not know about some of the big secret matters. It seemed that he needed to understand the Daoist a little more. At this time, Lin Yazi cautiously asked Chu Xiu, "Brother Chu, I wonder what your main objective is in this Jianghu?" Chu Xiu rubbed his head and put on a slightly vexed expression. "My master said that my strength is improving too fast, and my state of mind can't keep up with my strength. If I continue like this, it will affect my future cultivation. So, he told me to temporarily stop improving my cultivation and step into the world of Jianghu to train my heart. When I feel that my state of mind can match my strength, then I can go back. At the same time, I have to find the descendant of the Chou family to avenge myself." The disciples of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect were dumbstruck when they heard this. It was the first time they'd heard of someone actually complaining about being too strong. Zhao Lianyu pursed his lips. He thought that this person was a little shameless. Who would brag about how quickly their strength had increased? However, Lin Yazi felt that it was very normal. Chu Xiu was so young, but even he couldn't see through his strength. Who else but Gu Zun could train such an outstanding disciple? Even so, those Gu Zun experts might not be satisfied. The sole disciple of their lineage must be outstanding to the extreme, without the slightest flaw. Their state of mind might seem pretentious to other cultivators, but it was very important to Gu Zun's descendant. Lin Yazi tugged at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu is Gu Zun's descendant, so I would only be asking to be humiliated if I made any suggestions on your cultivation. However, if Brother Chu wants to gain experience in the Jianghu, I can give you some suggestions." "What is the Jianghu?" To put it bluntly, the Jianghu is just a tangle of interests, fighting, and killing. The Jianghu is dangerous, and people's hearts are unpredictable. A medium-sized sect like our 9 Phoenix Sword sect has always been in the Jianghu, so we are the closest to the Jianghu. The inner demon in Chu Xiu's mind would have laughed out loud if it weren't for the fact that it didn't have many human emotions when it heard Lin Yazi's words. He was actually talking about the Jianghu and benefits with Chu Xiu. This was simply too funny. The inner demon had been in the primitive demon cave for a long time and had seen countless people's hearts. Chu Xiu was definitely the most special of them all. The complexity of his thoughts was unimaginable. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was expressionless, as if he had been taught a lesson. He simply listened to Lin Yazi's boast. The fact that Lin Yazi could say that the Jianghu was just a matter of fighting and killing was enough to prove this person's perspective. He was only clever, but he couldn't see through the big picture. Lin Yazi continued, "So if Brother Chu wants to gain experience in the Jianghu, why not join my 9 Phoenix Sword sect? Of course, with Brother Chu's strength and master, I naturally don't want Brother Chu to join my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Instead, my Nine Phoenix Sword sect would like to invite Brother Chu to become a guest elder. Your status will be just below mine, and the entire sect will listen to Brother Chu's orders. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, Guest elder? Does a guest elder have that much authority? Although Lin Yazi didn't have a high perspective, he was still a bit clever. Giving such great authority to a guest elder, was he crazy? In the lower realms, guest elders and hangers-on were usually only available to the royal family and aristocratic families. However, they were all outsiders invited with a large sum of money. They were equivalent to high-level thugs, so it was impossible for them to have such great authority. Seeing the doubt in Chu Xiu's eyes, Lin Yazi patted his head and said, I forgot, Brother Chu is the successor of the ancient sovereign. You haven't stepped into the Jianghu for so many years, so you don't understand these things. Exalted Major was currently filled with the desire to recruit guest elders. Not to mention the aristocratic families, even some of the major sects were doing the same. What's more, the cause of this trend was a prime sovereign successor from more than 300 years ago. More than 300 years ago, among the ancient sovereigns, Meng Xinghe, the disciple of the martial immortal galaxy's unfettered cultivator, roamed the Jianghu and became sworn brothers with the current successor of the Eastern Domain's Cold River City, Yi Weikong. At that time, the Cold River City was not yet a top sect in the Eastern Domain. Its strength could only be said to be not weak. Of course, it was much stronger than my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Later, the Cold River City accidentally offended the Kiliakosm sect, a top sect in the Southern Domain. Even the current city lord of the Cold River City was accidentally killed. After Yi Weikong took over the Cold River City in a hurry, he stood his ground and made Meng Xinghe the guest elder of the Cold River City, giving him great power. Meng Xinghe's master, the Xinghe cultivator, was not only good at martial arts, astrology, divination, and planning. Under the leadership of Meng Xinghe and the trust of Yi Weikong, the Cold River City joined forces to resist the Kiliakosm sect in the Eastern Domain. At the same time, it accumulated strength. Finally, when its strength had accumulated to a certain extent, it began to counterattack the Kiliakosm sect. In the end, it defeated the Kiliakosm sect, causing the Kiliakosm sect to suffer heavy losses. The Cold River City also leaped to become a top sect in the Eastern Domain, comparable to those top sects that had existed for thousands of years. Later, Meng Xinghe felt that he had gained enough experience in the Jianghu. After giving Yi Weikong a cultivation method, he floated far away and returned to the mountain forest to take over the inheritance of the Xinghe cultivator. The deeds of these two people were spread by the people of the Jianghu. Since then, all the big sects also had the habit of recruiting guest elders. Don't doubt the people you use, don't use the people you doubt. If the guest chamberlain's role was played well, it could be even more useful than the disciples of the sect. During the period when Meng Xinghe was the guest elder of the Cold River City, he also obtained various opportunities and treasures. In the end, Meng Xinghe was even praised as the strongest among all the Xinghe cultivators. Lin Yazi didn't hide these things from Chu Xiu. After all, this was something that everyone in the Jianghu knew. However, Lin Yazi's words also contained a hint of temptation. Meng Xinghe joined the Cold River City and helped it become a top sect in the Eastern Domain. However, he himself also became the strongest among all the Xinghe cultivators, not even losing to his master. Now, if you, Chu Xiu, help my Nine Phoenix Sword sect, you might be able to reach the same level as Meng Xinghe. As he spoke, Lin Yazi looked at Lin Fengwu. For the first time, he felt that although his daughter had outstanding talent, she had always caused trouble for him. She had finally done the right thing. However, he didn't expect that since helping anyone was the same as stepping into the Jianghu and experiencing the world of mortals, why did Chu Xiu insist on helping your Nine Phoenix Sword sect? Could it be because your daughter has big breasts? In the entire Eastern Domain, there are countless sects that are stronger than your Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Chu Xiu only pondered for a moment before an unfathomable smile appeared on his face. He said, "All right. After I left the mountain, the first person I met was Miss Lin. This is karma and also fate. Perhaps, this is the will of the heavens. Lin Yazi immediately laughed and said, "Yes, yes, yes, it is the will of the heavens." Seeing that Chu Xiu had agreed, Lin Yazi immediately beamed with joy. He felt that his daughter was a little more pleasing to the eye. She had found a great opportunity. However, Lin Yazi had never thought of matchmaking Lin Fengwu with Chu Xiu. The reason was very simple. The descendants of the primes were emotionless and only wanted to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. Lust and children would both affect this. The tempering of the Jianghu was also a test of whether the descendants could withstand the temptation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. If the descendants of the primes could not withstand this test, then they were not qualified to be the descendants. They would be automatically eliminated, and the primes of that lineage would also accept new disciples. Although they would not be so cruel as to take back their martial arts, they would completely sever their karma relationship with them. From then on, the two of them would be like strangers. Whether they lived or died, the previous primes would no longer care about them. If he were to matchmake his daughter with Chu Xiu now, it would be very easy for Chu Xiu to misunderstand that he was trying to destroy his heart of Dao. After the banquet ended, Lin Yazi immediately announced this matter in front of everyone. Almost all the disciples of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect were very excited. The descendants of the primes were famous in the Daoist. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu was not the prime's descendant and was just an ordinary true fire spirit refinement cultivator, it was a good thing that their 9 Phoenix Sword sect had such a powerhouse joining them. Only Zhao Lianyu's face was gloomy, and he looked a little unhappy. After the banquet ended, Zhao Lianyu pulled Lin Fengwu, who was about to leave, and said, "Junior sister, go and persuade master. How can he so casually let Chu Xiu become a guest of our 9 Phoenix Sword sect and give him such great power?" Lin Fengwu said helplessly, "Senior brother, don't be like this, okay? Senior Chu is the prime's descendant, and he only has the pinnacle of martial arts in his heart. He doesn't have those mortal feelings. Even if I like him, he won't like me. I really have nothing to do with him." Zhao Liangyu said anxiously, "Junior sister. I'm not saying that because of this, but this Chu Xiu is really not a good person." Chapter 1091. Previously, Zhao Liangyu was a little against Chu Xiu because the opposite sex repels each other. He was afraid that his junior sister would be so close to a stranger. But later, Zhao Liangyu showed such hostility towards Chu Xiu was not because of this reason, but because he realized that Chu Xiu was really not an easy person to recognize. In other words, Chu Xiu's thoughts were not as simple as he made them out to be. As the eldest senior brother of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect, Zhao Lianyu's talent and cultivation were not as good as Lin Fengwu's, but he was able to sit firmly in this position all these years and gain Lin Yazi's favor. One of the very important reasons was that he had a special ability, and that was that he was born with very keen senses. This sense did not refer to the 5 senses or the 6th sense, but he could sense a person's inner activities. Of course, this sense was not mind-reading. He could only feel a very vague general idea, such as whether the other party was scheming against him or had ill intentions, and so on. Relying on this sense, Zhao Lianyu defeated many senior and junior brothers who were secretly scheming against him in the 9 Phoenix Sword sect and sat firmly in the position of eldest senior brother. Previously, when facing Chu Xiu, he had never been able to see through Chu Xiu's thoughts. It was only when Chu Xiu said those words at the banquet that Zhao Lianyu vaguely felt that this Chu Xiu seemed to be hiding a lot of things. His thoughts were definitely not simple, and he was definitely not a good person. However, because his previous hostility towards Chu Xiu was too obvious, Lin Fengwu did not believe what he said at all. "Senior brother, can you be a little more mature? Don't involve others in the matter between us. Senior Chu is already a foreign elder of my 9 Phoenix Sword sect now. If you speak ill of him again, then I'll have to tell father." After saying that, Lin Fengwu left a little angrily. Looking at his back, Zhao Lianyu snorted coldly and said, "If you don't listen to others, you will definitely regret it in the end." The next morning, after Chu Xiu woke up early, he first went to the 9 Phoenix Sword sect scripture pavilion to find many books to read. Of course, Chu Xiu wasn't here for the 9 Phoenix Sword sect's cultivation technique manuals. Although the cultivation technique of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was not considered low-level, it was definitely not high-level either. Chu Xiu could not be bothered to look at it even if it was given to him for free. What Chu Xiu was looking at were some general questions about the Daoist people, as well as some Daoist history. Previously, Chu Xiu had thought that the Daoist would definitely cover up that part of history. After all, what the Daoist ancestors had done back then wasn't exactly glorious. It was fine to escape to another world, but it was a blatant abandonment of the word fairness. Although it was pardonable, it was not honorable. But it turned out that these things were recorded very clearly in the Daoist's ancient books. In ancient times, the whole world was divided into 4 regions: east, west, south, and north. Therefore, after the Daoist people came to the Daoist, although the terrain of the Daoist was completely different from that of the mortal world, they still kept this name, perhaps because they missed their ancestral land. Even some counties were named after the former names. And in the center of the 4 regions was the Daoist Divine Palace. This Daoist Divine Palace was the center of the entire Daoist, and it was also where the Dragon Vein was located. It was also the place where the ancient martial artists broke through the world and entered the Daoist. Therefore, it was very important and was jointly controlled by the top sections. Every 10 years, the top sects were qualified to send a group of people to enter the Daoist Divine Palace to cultivate. These things were recorded in detail in the Daoist history. No wonder the people who ran out of the battlefield between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji shouted something about the ancestral land and were killed by Fang Qinglan in the end. It turned out that almost everyone in the Daoist knew about the ancestral land. However, the Daoist people did not know that there were still people living in the ancestral land. At least in the ancient books recorded by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, there were only descriptions about the mortal world before the Great Ancient Tribulation, but not after. The ancient books also tacitly agreed that their ancestral land had been destroyed in the Great Ancient Tribulation, and there was no vitality. In the following time, Chu Xiu learned some more common knowledge about the Daoist, and he also learned the Daoist language fluently. Although his accent was a little awkward before, Lin Fengwu and Lin Yazi did not care. They thought that it was because he stayed in the mountains and forests for a long time without anyone to talk to. But now it was time for Chu Xiu to change his accent, otherwise it might arouse the suspicion of others. Chu Xiu stayed in the Sutras depository for many days, but Lin Yazi could not sit still. He asked Chu Xiu to be a guest because he wanted him to help strengthen the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, not to let Chu Xiu read books. But now, during this period, Chu Xiu directly went into the Sutras depository and did not come out. Lin Yazi had to invite Chu Xiu out of the Sutras depository. Chu Xiu was still a little unwilling and said, "Lord Lin, I have stayed in the forest for so long, and I must finish reading the movements outside. There are still many ancient books that I have not finished reading. Why did you bring me out?" Chu Xiu was really reading in the Sutras depository. How could he finish understanding the 10,000 years of Daoist history in just a few days? It wasn't that Chu Xiu was fond of studying such things. Rather, he wanted to learn more about the celestial exalted plane's history over the past 10,000 years. He wanted to see how the forces and sects of the celestial exalted plane operated and their personalities. After reading for a few days, if Chu Xiu had to give an evaluation to the Daoist, then Chu Xiu's evaluation would be ancient. Ancient did not mean strong or good, but it did not mean bad either. The inheritance of the Daoist could be traced back to ancient times. More than half of the current Daoist sects, or more accurately, 80% of the factions, could be traced back to ancient times. There was also Chu Xiu's fake identity, and the inheritance of the primes, which could be traced back to ancient times. In other words, after a whole 10,000 years, only 20% of the Daoist factions had risen. This was simply inconceivable. In the lower realms, it was the opposite. Factions that had more than 10,000 years of inheritance were rare. Chu Xiu did not know whether this situation was good or bad. Was it because the Daoist factions were too strong and stable, or because the Daoist cultivators lacked the fighting spirit to cause this result? This was what Chu Xiu had seen in the past few days. Before he could figure out more, he was called out by Lin Yazi. Looking at Chu Xiu, Lin Yazi smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu, if you continue to read, my 9 Phoenix Sword sect might not exist anymore. During this period, my 9 Phoenix Sword sect has been facing countless troubles." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Oh, what troubles?" Lin Yazi said, "Actually, Brother Chu, you should know that there are a few sects in Fonglin County that are close to my 9 Phoenix Sword sect. They coveted my 9 Phoenix Sword sect's heavenly absolute sword technique, so they came to find trouble with me. Originally, I had already agreed to share the heavenly absolute sword technique with them, but I didn't expect them to be so insatiable. They even wanted to kill my daughter, so I fell out with them. During these past few days, they've been taking turns to suppress the businesses of my 9 Phoenix Sword sect in Fonglin County, and we must think of a way to deal with them. Otherwise, if we allow them to nibble away at our businesses step by step, then our 9 Phoenix Sword sect will never have a day of peace." Chu Xiu looked at Lin Yazi with a strange gaze. "Do we still need to think of a way to solve this problem?" Hearing this, Lin Yazi felt even more strange. "Don't we need to think of a way?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "These sects covet the heavenly absolute sword technique in your hands. Coveting this kind of treasure is equivalent to stealing your wealth. They almost killed your most beloved and only son and daughter. This is the revenge of killing a relative. Now, they are still nibbling away at your 9 Phoenix Sword sect step by step, wanting to destroy it. This is equivalent to exterminating your sect. They are now ready to steal your wealth, kill your close relatives, and destroy your entire sect. They are just short of shitting on your head. Are you still going to think of a way? Of course, we will fight them with our lives. What else do you need to think of?" Lin Yazi was aggrieved by Chu Xiu's words, but he could only say, "Of course, I also know that we have to fight with our lives, but the problem is that even if we fight with our lives, we might not be able to win. It's fine if it's just one sect, but this time, there are 3 sections. How can we fight?" Chu Xiu threw away the book in his hand and said indifferently, "We couldn't win in the past, but now that we have a guest elder like me, can we still not win?" Lin Yazi rubbed his hands excitedly. He had been waiting for Chu Xiu to say this. "Brother Chu, I will leave the 9 Phoenix Sword sect to you from now on. How are we going to make a move? Do you need to lay out a plan first?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Is there a need to go through so much trouble to kill people? It's simple and direct. I'm killing people, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Sect Master Lin, you just need to bring people over and help me clean up the mess." Seeing Chu Xiu's indifferent appearance, Lin Yazi was a little dazed, but he didn't doubt it. Because he didn't just hear confidence from Chu Xiu's indifferent tone, he even heard a wisp of dense killing intent. That wasn't Chu Xiu's intentional killing intent, but it was released subconsciously. Lin Yazi was still a little puzzled about this. Didn't this Chu Xiu always live in seclusion in the mountains? At most, he could kill some demonic beasts. How could he possibly nurture such a strong killing intent? However, Lin Yazi was only puzzled for a short moment and didn't think too much about it. According to Chu Xiu, his martial arts were Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic. Among them, he was most proficient in demonic Dao cultivation techniques. Demonic Dao cultivation techniques were extremely gloomy, so they would condense a large amount of blood qi. It was normal for Chu Xiu to have this kind of killing intent. Because Dugu Weiwei didn't exist, the Daoist cultivators didn't discriminate against demonic Dao cultivation techniques. They just felt a little annoyed with cultivators who cultivated demonic Dao cultivation techniques. After all, demonic Dao cultivation techniques were extremely gloomy, so cultivators who cultivated demonic Dao cultivation techniques were more bloodthirsty and eccentric. However, it was only a slight annoyance, and it was far from the level of wanting to exterminate demons in the lower realms. It could be said that Dugu Weiwei's existence had allowed the demonic Dao to reach its peak, but it had also caused it to fall to the bottom. Chapter 1092. In a mountain forest outside Fonglin County's Long River sect, hundreds of 9 Phoenix Sword sect elites gathered here. All the 9 Phoenix Sword sect martial artists felt very novel. For a sect like Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, in the process of rising, there would definitely be sects fighting and disputes, and they were actually used to it. But it was really the first time they encountered something like this without any preparation. It could be said to be simple and violent to the extreme, which made them a little uncomfortable. Lin Fengwu stood behind Chu Xiu. She was very confident in Chu Xiu. Since the last time in the Diluo Mountains, when she saw the power of Chu Xiu killing 5 real pellet realm martial artists in an instant, Lin Fengwu was very confident in Chu Xiu. Zhao Liangyu stood next to Lin Fengwu, looking at Chu Xiu with a vigilant expression. Intuition told him that Chu Xiu was not a good person. Even if he was helping Nine Phoenix Sword Sect solve the trouble now, in fact, he had ulterior motives and had his own calculations. Sect Master Lin, can you help me explain the general information of this Long River sect? Chu Xiu said to Lin Yazi on the side. Lin Yazi nodded and said, I almost forgot, before the fight, I really should tell Brother Chu about the opponent's information. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Chu Xiu shook his head, that's not what I meant. It's just that I want to know exactly who it was that I killed. Lin Yazi choked for a moment, but he still coughed and said, the origin of Long River sect is actually very similar to my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. The ancestors of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect came from the Mystic Heaven Mirror in the northern region, and the sect master of Long River sect, Fang Changhe, came from the War God sect in the southern region. The other party is also a top force in the southern region. It is said that Fang Changhe seemed to have offended some big shot in the War God sect and said something he shouldn't say, so he was expelled. When this person had just settled down in Fanglin County, he'd once sought help from my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. I never expected that he would be so ungrateful and actually want to kill my daughter. Chu Xiu didn't care about Lin Yaxi's indignation. He just rubbed his chin. He felt that the way the Daoist handled things was indeed a bit strange. It seemed that the top sects never killed their disciples who committed mistakes. They didn't even take back their martial arts. They simply expelled them from the sect. By doing this, could it be that they still wanted to leave behind a trace of incense offerings? Aren't you afraid that your disciples will resent you and take revenge in the future? In any case, Chu Xiu would not do such a thing that would bring him endless trouble. Although some of the other sects in the lower realms would not exterminate them, they would take back their martial arts. However, the Daoist's way of doing things was different. Chu Xiu didn't care too much about it. With a wave of his hand, he led his people to the Long River sect. Lin Yazi had taken over his father's Nine Phoenix Sword sect, while Fang Changhe of the Long River sect had relied on his own strength to establish the Long River sect's foundation. Based on this, it was obvious that Fang Changhe was much more capable than Lin Yazi. Inside the Long River sect, Fang Changhe was personally teaching his disciples martial arts. Actually, Fang Changhe didn't know any sword techniques. His expertise lay in fist and palm techniques. Similarly, he had no intention of switching to learning sword techniques. This time, the 3 sects had joined forces to seize the sword technique manual. Although it wasn't essential to him, he still agreed to it. The reason was very simple. He could forego the sword techniques, but he had to accept the benefits from the other 2 sections. As for the friendship he'd had with Lin Yazi in the past, it was nothing compared to these benefits. At the very most, he wouldn't be so ruthless when it came to fighting. The Nine Phoenix Sword Sect strength had actually been pretty good in the past. Unfortunately, ever since Lin Yaxi's father had passed away, the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect had been declining year by year. If they weren't strong enough and couldn't protect their treasures, they couldn't blame others for being greedy. At this moment, a disciple ran in somewhat frantically and said, Sect Master, the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect are here to fight. Fang Changhe raised his eyebrows and said somewhat astonished, Lin Yazi actually has the guts to do this? I've underestimated him. Let's go and take a look. Let's see what gave Lin Yazi the courage to make a move. Fang Changhe wasn't being arrogant, but he really didn't take Lin Yazi seriously. He was a martialist from the Southern Domain's Battle God sect. Even though he had been expelled from the sect, his martial arts skills were still there. A martialist like Lin Yasi simply couldn't compare to the teachings and resources that a martialist like him had received from a top-notch sect like Lin Yasi. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could be traced back to the Northern Domain's mysterious Heaven Mirror, that was a matter from hundreds of years ago and had nothing to do with the current Lin Yasi. When Fang Changhe walked out with his men and saw that the elites of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect were all present, he sneered and said, "Lin Yasi, who are you trying to show by putting up such a big show? Don't tell me that you really think you can destroy my Long River sect with just this bit of strength?" Lin Yasi said angrily, "Fang Changhe. When you came to Fanglin County back then, I didn't mistreat you. When your Long River sect had just been established, I even gave you a lot of resources and help. Is this how you repay me now?" Fang Changhe said indifferently, "A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring." "That's right, Lin Yasi. Don't be too greedy and don't treat others like fools. In the past, your Nine Phoenix Sword sect offended several large sects and was on the verge of destruction. I just happened to appear, so you used me as a shield to get some small benefits. I know all of this, but I didn't say anything. I helped you block those people. But now, you're still using the pitiful kindness from before to talk about it. Do you really think I'm an idiot? Your Nine Phoenix Sword sect can't keep the Heavenly Extinction Sword technique, but you still don't want to hand it over. Don't blame us for being ruthless." Lin Yasi looked angry and wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Enough. Aren't you tired of talking so much nonsense? It's already time to fall out with him. Who cares if he's grateful or not? Just kill him directly." Fang Changhe hadn't noticed Chu Xiu before. After all, Chu Xiu didn't deliberately reveal his aura. Coupled with his young appearance, it was easy for people to mistake him for Lin Yasi's disciple. However, Fang Changhe's expression turned solemn when he heard Chu Xiu's words. He realized that he couldn't see through the young man's cultivation level. "Who exactly are you?" Fang Changhe asked cautiously. He was now certain that Lin Yasi had the guts to cause trouble for him because of this mysterious young man. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Sect leader Fang doesn't need to know who I am. You're about to die anyway, so a dead man doesn't need to know so much." "How arrogant." Fang Changhe snorted coldly. Although he couldn't see through the young man's cultivation level, it didn't mean that he would just give up without a fight. He would only know who was stronger and who was weaker after a fight. Chu Xiu shook his head. He didn't want to waste time talking to Fang Changhe anymore. He broke through the formation and unsheathed the shining long saber. The moment it was unsheathed, the powerful force on the saber alone was enough to make one's heart tremble. Lin Yasi thought to himself, as expected of the successor of Gu Zun. Just this saber alone is not an ordinary item. Fang Changhe's heart skipped a beat. Anyone who could use a saber like this was definitely not an ordinary person. He formed a fist seal with his hand. In an instant, his body seemed to have connected with the ground beneath his feet. When the fist seal landed, it was like a towering mountain range. Immovable like a mountain, able to block the sun and moon. Immovable like a landslide, able to topple Mount Tai. Lin Yasi quickly said, "This is the martial god sect's secret technique, moving mountain. It can be used for both offense and defense, and its fist techniques are ever-changing. Brother Chu, you must be careful." Before he could finish speaking, Chu Xiu had already slashed with his saber. In an instant, the dazzling saber gleam pierced through heaven and earth. Anything that came into contact with the saber would shatter. At this moment, everyone had the illusion that the entire world seemed to have been sliced in half by Chu Xiu's saber. When Fang Changhe's moving mountain was used for defense, it was immovable like a mountain, able to block the sun and moon. However, in the face of Chu Xiu's saber, it did not matter whether it was a mountain range or a sun or a moon. In the face of life and death, Fang Changhe let out a furious roar. He wanted to burn his blood essence for another desperate attack. However, the speed of Chu Xiu's saber was simply too fast. It was so fast that it surpassed time and space. It was so fast that it surpassed Fang Changhe's reaction speed. By the time he completely reacted, his entire body had already been sliced in half by Chu Xiu's saber. His body fell to the ground, and fresh blood stained the ground beneath his feet. At this moment, whether it was the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect or the Long River sect, everyone was stunned. The sect leader of a sect, an expert at the true fire spirit refinement realm, had been sliced in half by someone's saber. This was a huge blow to them. After a few breaths, the people from the Long River sect finally reacted. They screamed and fled. Chu Xiu said indifferently to Lin Yazi, who was still in a daze, "Sect leader Lin, what are you waiting for? If you continue to drag this out, you will disappear without a trace. Even if you don't want to eliminate the root of the problem, the Long River sect has so many martial art disciples. Don't tell me you don't intend to accept them all?" After hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lin Yazi seemed to come back to his senses. He nodded repeatedly and immediately sent his subordinates to clean up the mess. For some reason, when Lin Yazi looked at Chu Xiu now, he actually felt a slight fear. He knew why. It was because he feared Lin Yazi's strength. Fang Changhe was stronger than Lin Yazi. In the end, he couldn't even withstand a single move from Chu Xiu before being killed. Perhaps this was because he could not react in time. However, Chu Xiu's strength was even more shocking. After a long while, when the Nine Phoenix Sword sect took over the Long River sect, Lin Yazi asked, "Brother Chu, what should we do next?" Unknowingly, Lin Yazi's attitude towards Chu Xiu had unconsciously become respectful. Perhaps even he did not realize it. Looking into the distance, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Of course we'll deal with the remaining two sects in one go." Chapter 1093. The cultivators from the Celestial Absolute Celestial were slightly weaker than Chu Xiu had imagined. Perhaps it was because they had a higher starting point, but among those of the same rank, they had actually experienced less killing and tempering than the warriors of the lower realm. In the lower realm, those who could reach the true fire spirit refinement realm were the pillars of their sects and stood out from the rest. It was even more difficult for rogue cultivators. They had to fight against the heavens, the earth, and other people to reach this realm. According to Lin Yazi, Fang Changhe's strength was considered strong among the true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists in Fanglin County. He was also from a large sect. Therefore, Chu Xiu had used the breaking formula saber intent and attacked with all his strength. In the end, who would have thought that the strength Lin Yazi was talking about was actually this strong? This bit of strength was really not much stronger than the patriarchs of the aristocratic families that Chu Xiu had killed in the lower realm. Chu Xiu did not delay. He led the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to the other two forces, the Yao family and the Fenglin Sword sect. Since they were all the same, he would find an opportunity to get rid of them all in one day. At this moment, in the Fenglin Sword sect, the people from the two sects had gathered together. Everyone was panicking. The development of the Daoist formation Dao was much better than in the lower realm. Communication formations were things that only the top experts in the lower realm would have. In the Daoist realm, basically all the sects with a bit of strength would have them. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had participated in fights between sects before, it was their first time doing something like exterminating a sect. Therefore, they were a little slow and the news spread to the Yao family and the Fenglin Sword sect. Fang Changhe is dead? How is that possible? What kind of backer did Lin Yazi find? Could it be a mystic heaven and earth enlightening expert from the mystic heaven domain? The sect leader of the Fenglin Sword sect was panicking. He had a good relationship with Fang Changhe. He was also the one who had dragged Fang Changhe to do this. Therefore, he naturally knew how powerful Fang Changhe was. But now, the other side said that Fang Changhe had been killed with a single slash. He couldn't believe it. The head of the Yao family was calmer than the sect leader of the Fenglin Sword sect. He said in a low voice, "It should be impossible. Even if the Lin family is connected to the Mystic Heaven domain, the Mystic Heaven domain is far from the southern region. Can Lin Yazi predict the future and know that we are going to deal with him in advance, so he summoned the people from the mysterious heaven mirror? Even if he is not from the Mystic Heaven domain, How can we deal with someone who can kill Fang Changhe with one strike? The head of the Yao family rubbed his head with a helpless expression. But before they knew it, the Fang Changhe, the Nine Sword, the sect, Fang, and Yazi sect, Nine sect clan leader Yi family, sect Yanxiu sect. The two of them looked at each other and their hearts sank. How could the other party be so fast? The Fang family's eyes. Realm. The 2 points, family were from the 9 realm. I sect Feng point, I sect, Lin realm, I Yang, sect, I in, the Feng, realm, I Feng, I Lin, sect. Of the clan. I'll give you a chance. Admit defeat, and the Feng, Yao, and sect leaders will join the 9 Phoenix Sword, and I'll give you an elder position. The sect leader of the Feng Lin Sword sect and the head of the Yao clan had ashen expressions. Who would want to be an elder if they could just be a sect master and sect master? Before they could say anything, Chu Xiu turned to Lin Yazi and said, "Who said we're going to let them off?" Lin Yazi was dumbfounded. What else? Kill them all? Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It doesn't matter if we kill the others, but do you want to keep those 2 alive?" Sect leader Lin, you're the leader of a sect. Don't say such naive words again. You have to know that nurturing a tiger is a recipe for disaster. You can swallow up the Feng, Lin Yazi sect and the Yao family, but those 2 must be leaders with prestige and strength. You have to kill them before you can be safe. Otherwise, if they make use of their power to cause trouble for you, how are you going to deal with them? Since it's so troublesome, why don't we just kill them once and for all? Lin Yazi looked at Chu Xiu, dumbfounded. After witnessing Chu Xiu's strength, he also saw another side of Chu Xiu, ruthlessness. In truth, while it was common for the martial world powers of the Celestial of Absolute Heaven to fight and exterminate sects, most of them would leave a way out. This was not because Lin Yazi was soft-hearted, but because this was the custom of the Celestial of Absolute Heaven. It was an unspoken rule that everyone tacitly agreed upon. Lin Yazi had forgotten to tell Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu had acted too quickly. Even if he had reminded him, it was too late. They had developed this habit because when the various factions came to the Daoist 10,000 years ago, there weren't many of them. They had conflicts when they were in the lower realm, and these conflicts naturally wouldn't disappear just because they came to the Daoist. Therefore, there were still battles. However, there weren't many of them, so everyone restrained themselves and tried their best not to kill each other. Therefore, after so many years, this kind of thing had evolved into an unspoken rule of the Daoist. Unless there was a great enmity like killing one's father or stealing one's wife, no one would kill each other. Seeing Chu Xiu and Lin Yazi discussing their life and death, the Feng Lin Sword sect's leader and the Yao family's leader both had expressions of fury. No matter what, they were the leaders of this faction, and they were also experts in the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, in the end, they were like a plate of food in someone else's hands, being eaten however they wanted. How could they accept this? The 2 of them roared angrily and charged toward Chu Xiu. The Feng Lin Sword sect's leader swung his long sword, causing countless winds and clouds to surge. The sword aura was majestic. The Yao family's leader used a rod as a weapon, which was rare. He smashed it toward Chu Xiu's head, and a powerful gust of wind whistled like a shattering mountain. Fighting 1 against 2, Lin Yazi still wanted to go up and help. However, before he could do anything, Chu Xiu had already taken a step forward. In an instant, countless world annihilation flames were released. Those pitch-black flames almost instantly enveloped the 2 of them, and countless intense gusts of wind started to burn. The world annihilation flames that could incinerate everything were far too powerful and evil. It gave the Feng Lin Sword sect's leader and the Yao family's leader a huge shock. The Yao family's leader gritted his teeth, and the vital energy and blood in his body erupted. He used his full strength, and his entire body emitted a golden glow. Only then did he break through the envelopment of the world annihilation flames, smashing down toward Chu Xiu with his rod. This is your rod technique? Weak, too weak. There's no aura at all. What right do you have to use such a fierce weapon? Chu Xiu waved his hand casually. In an instant, the Yao family's leader discovered to his shock that the vital energy and blood in his entire body seemed to be out of his control, gushing toward Chu Xiu crazily. Today, I'll let you see what a true rod technique is. Countless amounts of fresh blood were drawn out by Chu Xiu, and the Yao family's leader's body fell onto the ground like a dried corpse. He was only left with a single breath. The fresh blood condensed in Chu Xiu's hand, turning into a blood-colored coiling dragon rod. He smashed it toward the Feng Lin sword sect's leader. The Black Tortoise True Technique's Tiger Roar rod was displayed. Although Chu Xiu only knew this one rod technique, the Black Tortoise True Technique was still the Black Tortoise True Technique after all. Each cultivation technique was extraordinary. As Chu Xiu's cudgel landed, countless cudgel shadows enveloped the Feng Lin sword sect leader. The powerful force smashed into mid-air, emitting a series of tiger roars. In less than 3 breaths' time, the Feng Lin sword sect leader was smashed into meat paste by his cudgel. The Yao family's leader, who was left with a single breath, finally breathed his last when he saw this scene. He had practiced rod techniques for his entire life, but in the end, he realized that his rod techniques were inferior to a saber user. He didn't know whether he died because he couldn't take it anymore or because he was angered to death. Chu Xiu didn't make any more moves after dealing with the two of them as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The rest was left to Lin Yazi. If Lin Yazi couldn't even get rid of these people, he would be too useless as a sect leader. Actually, to sects like the Yao family or the Feng Lin sword sect, if you said they were strong, they only had a true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist. However, if you said they were weak, they still had a true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist. This was a very awkward situation. Only one person would be able to determine who was strong and who was weak. However, most of the sects were in such a situation. Hence, after Chu Xiu dealt with the person in charge, the others wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Lin Yazi stood there with a look of disbelief in his eyes. Fenglin County was only so big. Usually, the sects that fought the most were the few sections. Of course, most of the time, the 9 Phoenix Sword sect was at a disadvantage. In the end, the 3 sects were all annihilated in a single day. This made Lin Yazi feel like it was unreal. Chu Xiu didn't want the things he had obtained from annexing the 3 sections. He gave them all to the 9 Phoenix Sword sect. He had obtained the things that Dugu Weiwei had left behind. The 8 Revolution and 9 Revolution Supreme Grade pills could be eaten like jelly beans. Of course, he wouldn't be interested in these things. However, he asked Lin Yazi to find the records of the 3 sects for him. He wanted to see if there was anything about Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji in the records of the 3 sections. In the end, after spending a few days looking through these things, Chu Xiu was still a little disappointed. He didn't gain anything at all. Among the 3 sects, the Long River sect was founded by Feng Changhe himself. Therefore, there was no history at all. It only recorded some things about him. The Feng Lin sword sect had only been established for 200 to 300 years. Its ancestors were also unaffiliated cultivators, so it didn't have much history. Only the Yao family's legacy had been passed down for more than 500 years. However, there were only some scattered records. There was no description of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. In the same few days, the entire Fenglin County seemed to have been turned upside down, and countless waves were stirred up. Chapter 1094. As a large county in the eastern domain, Fenglin County was usually very peaceful, and there were not many major disturbances. This was because everyone's strength was about the same. Even if the major sects attacked the 9 Phoenix Sword sect this time, it was only after the 3 sects joined forces. If there was only one sect, they might not have dared to make a move. Now, however, the 3 major sects were completely wiped out within a day. This matter could not be described as ripples in stagnant water. It was like throwing a bomb into a pool. Everyone knew what kind of person Lin Yazi was. He would never do such a thing, so a group of people went to inquire about Chu Xiu's identity. Chu Xiu did not ask Lin Yazi to hide his identity. He didn't want to play the pig to eat the tiger. He wanted to obtain more things and find more information about Duguwewa. In fact, the best way was to directly enter the celestial Daluo. What kind of information one could obtain depended entirely on what kind of status one had. For example, in the lower realm, some secrets about the great ancient calamity were just legends to ordinary cultivators, but they were very clear to those who truly stood at the top. Therefore, although the sects in Fenglin County did not find out about Chu Xiu's specific identity, they knew that the person who helped the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was a primeval sovereign successor. Although most people were still a little confused about this matter, they were still envious of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect's luck to be able to curry favor with a primeval sovereign successor. In the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, Lin Fengwu carefully knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's house and asked, "Senior Chu, are you still looking for clues about your old rival?" Chu Xiu nodded and asked, "Why? Did you find anything?" Lin Fengwu asked in return, "Are you still looking for clues about a Dao expert?" Chu Xiu had not actually mentioned anything about Ning Xuanji to Lin Fengwu. In his opinion, Dugu Weiwei was so good at stirring up trouble and being so high profile, yet he did not leave any clues. Ning Xuanji would certainly not leave any clues behind. However, since he had the time, he had also instructed some disciples of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to pay attention to this information when they were copying the records of the three sects, so it was normal for Lin Fengwu to know about it. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. That Daoist expert was a good friend of my ancestor. Back then, he also fought with that demon, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Therefore, when I left the mountain this time, my master also asked me to find out if that Daoist expert still exists, if there is any inheritance left behind and so on." Lin Fengwu said excitedly, "If that's the case, I might be able to find some clues." Chu Xiu quickly asked, "What kind of clues?" Having been in the Dalu Ocean for so long, Fenglin County was not considered remote. It was one of the large counties in the eastern region. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect and the other sects were not considered strong, they were not weak either. However, Chu Xiu did not find any clues from them. This made him wonder if his guess was right. Now that he had finally found a trace of clues, Chu Xiu could not help but feel a little excited. Lin Fengwu took out something that looked like a notebook and said, "These are anecdotes written by some media in the pugilistic world. I don't like the boring Daluotian history that my father told me, so I've collected a lot of such things. There's a description of the Hunyuan sect's ancestor. It seems to be similar to the Daoist expert that official Chu is looking for." Chu Xiu took the notebook and flipped through it, carefully reading the contents. The so-called Hunyuan sect was a large Daoist sect in the northern region. It was not a large sect that had been passed down for 10,000 years, but had risen 500 years ago. According to the notebook, the ancestor of the Hunyuan sect, Dao Lord Xianxia, was just a little Daoist priest who stuttered when interpreting the lots for others 500 years ago. In the end, he met an expert and exchanged a pot of dog meat for the expert's guidance. In exchange, he obtained a powerful cultivation technique. In the end, he had an epiphany and encountered countless obstacles along the way. In the end, he became a Daoist sovereign in the martial immortal realm. He founded the Hunyuan sect and became a large sect in the northern region. The things written in the notebook were all exaggerated. It described Dao Lord Xianxia as being like Long Outyan, who offended people wherever he went. Then, he kept slapping people's faces all the way until he became a Dao Lord. In reality, Dao Lord Xianxia was a modest and kind person. When he preached, he never hid anything from others. As long as one focused on the Dao, he would answer any question for them. There were even a few love scenes with Dao Lord Xianxia. There were even a few sex scenes. However, the key parts were torn out. Chu Xiu glanced at Lin Fengwu, who immediately turned her head away with a red face. She was a little embarrassed. Although there were many exaggerated parts, the description of the expert from the Dao sect seemed to Chu Xiu to be Ning Xuanji. If other people saw this description, they would definitely not think of Ning Xuanji. However, Chu Xiu was certain because he was one of the few people in the pugilistic world who knew the true face of the old Daoist Ning Xuanji. The old Daoist Ning Xuanji was not an immortal. On the contrary, he had a very bad character. According to the description in the notebook, the expert from the Dao sect made things difficult for Dao Lord Xianxia at the beginning. He tricked him into stealing the dogs of the farmers at the foot of the mountain to make dog meat pot. His words were also full of vulgarities. His character was very bad. Other than the fact that he was dressed like a beggar, unlike Ning Xuanji, he was almost exactly the same as Ning Xuanji. Of course, this could also be done by the anemophilia himself. Perhaps in his opinion, the senior expert must have a strange character and did not care about his appearance. Chu Xiu touched his chin. 500 years ago, their characters were so similar. If this was a coincidence, even Chu Xiu himself would not believe it. Lin Fengwu asked cautiously, "Senior Chu, is this information useful to you?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes, it's very useful. It can even be said that this is the most useful clue I've obtained in a while." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lin Fengwu immediately revealed a look of joy. "By the way, go and call your father over. I have something to tell him." After Lin Fengwu went out, she was pulled aside by Zhao Yangyu after just a few steps. "Junior sister, what did I tell you? Chu Xiu is not a good person. Why are you still so close to him?" Zhao Yangyu looked distressed, but there was a hint of fear on his face. He was also present when Chu Xiu went on a killing spree the last time. Seeing the sect masters who usually oppose the Nine Phoenix Sword sect all die at the hands of Chu Xiu as easily as killing chickens, it was impossible for Zhao Yangyu not to fear Chu Xiu. But fear was fear, he could still feel from Chu Xiu's body that his schemes were definitely not as simple as Lin Fengwu and Lin Yazi thought. Lin Fengwu looked at Zhao Yangyu helplessly and said, "Senior brother, Official Chu is now a guest of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect." Such a big crisis this time was also resolved by Official Chu's help. "It's not good for you to always slander Official Chu like this with prejudice. I still have things to do, so you're on your own." After saying that, Lin Fengwu directly left, leaving behind a sullen Zhao Yangyu. In all honesty, he was speaking the truth this time. A moment later, Lin Yazi arrived at Chu Xiu's room. "Brother Chu, why are you looking for me? Do you lack any cultivation resources?" "Don't worry, Brother Chu, if you lack anything, you can tell me. As long as the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has it, it will definitely not be left out." Recently, Lin Yazi had been riding on the crest of success. Previously, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could be said to have been suppressed, but this time, they finally turned the tables and even faintly had the power of the #1 sect in Fonglin County. After all, the martial arts forces in Fonglin County were not much different. This time, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect directly destroyed the 3 major sections. Who could have such power? Therefore, Lin Yazi was in a good mood now. His attitude towards Chu Xiu was even a little too warm, as if he was afraid that Chu Xiu would leave the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Sect Master Lin, are you happy now?" Lin Yazi nodded subconsciously, then shook his head awkwardly and said, "A little happy, but I still have a sense of propriety. I'm not too happy." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's good. This time, I called you here to discuss the integration of the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County." Lin Yazi was stunned and said, "What integration?" Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "Sect Master Lin, with my help, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has already become the strongest sect in the entire Fonglin County. Wouldn't it be a pity if we don't make use of this advantage? Right now, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect is only the #1 force that people talk about. Why don't we make it the real #1 force?" Therefore, I decided to use the Nine Phoenix Sword sect as the core and call on all the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County to form an alliance. Everyone will take out their respective cultivation techniques and books and share a portion of their resources with the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Of course, it won't be for nothing. Every once in a while, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect will hold an arena competition, and the young geniuses who win can come to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to receive meticulous nurturing. The resources will all be provided by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. When Chu Xiu finished speaking, Lin Yazi was already dumbfounded. Was Chu Xiu still speaking like a human? This was simply slaughtering all the martial arts forces in the entire Fenglin County like pigs and dogs. Even if his Nine Phoenix Sword sect was the one who benefited, Lin Yazi couldn't bear to listen to it anymore. Cultivation techniques and books were the most important things in each sect. Wanting them to take them out was simply asking for their lives. Then, taking their resources to nurture their disciples was simply like wool coming from a sheep's back. How much the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could embezzle was up to them. Moreover, they had to send their disciples to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect for nurturing. Couldn't they nurture them themselves? After the nurturing was over, would those disciples belong to them or the Nine Phoenix Sword sect? Lin Yazi dared to guarantee that if he did that, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect would directly become the target of public criticism and be besieged by all the martial arts forces in the entire Fenglin County. Chapter 1095. The conditions proposed by Chu Xiu could no longer be described as excessive. It was simply taking a dump on Chu Xiu's head. No sect would agree to such conditions. Lin Yazi thought that Chu Xiu was so eager for quick success because he had no experience in the martial world. Therefore, he kindly advised, "Brother Chu, this is not how things should be done. Although your imagination is correct, what if you force the other party into a corner and everyone joins forces? What should we do then? Officials can force people to rebel, let alone these unruly martial arts sections." Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "If anyone dares to rebel, then just kill them. They can't beat me anyway. This is a multiple-choice question. Live or die, it's a very easy choice." Lin Yazi was dumbfounded. He was shocked by Chu Xiu's worldview. Chu Xiu said, "Sect leader Lin, these are all taught to me by my master. He once said that there are so many messy things in the martial world. They seem complicated, but most of the time, only one thing is needed to solve them, and that is strength. Schemes are no match for fists and swords. As long as you beat them into submission, they will do it even if you ask them to eat shit, let alone defecate on their heads. Although it sounds crude, it's not. Anyone will make such a choice in the face of the threat of death." Seeing that Lin Yazi still wanted to say something, Chu Xiu sighed again. He pulled Lin Yazi and said, "Sect leader Lin, in fact, everything I've done is for you. You know who I am. I'm the successor of Gu Zun. When I finish my training, I will leave sooner or later. Now that the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has me as a guest, they can protect everything and their status. But what about after I leave? Will the Nine Phoenix Sword sect be able to protect everything?" With the help of Gu Zun's successor, Meng Xinghe, Cold River City became a top sect in the world. But if Cold River City didn't have such strength, what would the result be? They would be torn to pieces by the sects that had grudges against them in the past. After I left the mountain, the first person I met was Miss Lin, and the first sect I met was the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. This is karma, and it's also fate. So I can't bear to see the scene of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect being annihilated after I return to the sect. So, while I'm still here, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect must develop quickly to the point where no one dares to touch it. The entire Fenglin County was only so big. It was too difficult to develop step by step, so they could only rely on plundering. Plundering other sects' resources, other sects' disciples, other sects' everything. Sect leader Lin, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Think about it carefully." Lin Yazi was confused by Chu Xiu's words. After thinking it over, he gritted his teeth and agreed. He was just a timid and cautious person, but he was not short-sighted and brainless. Chu Xiu's plan was indeed not harmful to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. If he didn't agree to it, was he supposed to reject it? Therefore, when the Nine Phoenix Sword sect spread the news to the entire Fenglin County, all the forces in the Fenglin County thought that Lin Yazi had gone mad. Fenglin Commandery had been peaceful for so many years. What exactly did Lin Yazi want? Wasn't he afraid of becoming the target of everyone and being attacked by others? Later, everyone realized that Lin Yazi was really not afraid. The people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had said that if they obeyed, it would be fine. Otherwise, they would end up like the Long River sect and the other two sections. Lin Yazi didn't have that kind of strength, but Chu Xiu did. Some time ago, when Chu Xiu had killed those 3 people, many cultivators had witnessed it. Everyone could attest to Chu Xiu's strength and ruthlessness. Therefore, to Chu Xiu's surprise, when the news spread throughout the entire Fanglin County, Chu Xiu thought that they were going to join forces to resist. He was already prepared to kill. However, the martial arts forces in Fanglin County were terrified. That's right, they were terrified. Although there were people secretly cursing Chu Xiu and the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, in fact, no one stood up to resist openly. This made Chu Xiu feel very bored. To think that the sects of the Exalted Heaven, or rather the sects of the Fanglin County, would actually be so cowardly. How boring. In the lower realm, when Chu Xiu was suppressing the Northern Yen pugilistic world, he had to kill wave after wave of people before he could suppress the entire Northern Yen pugilistic world. Even so, when the Taoist sects and Buddhist sects intervened in the Northern Yen martial world, these guys still dared to stand up and cause trouble. It could be said that they were very tenacious. In the end, when Chu Xiu only killed 3 people, they were so scared that they did not dare to move. Their endurance was a little too low. Although it was Chu Xiu who was convenient, it made Chu Xiu feel a little uncomfortable. After thinking about it, Chu Xiu finally came to a conclusion. It was not that the Daoist warriors were afraid of death, but that they lived too comfortably and comfortably. The Daoist world was rich in the essence of heaven and earth and rich in natural resources. Even a sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect did not lack pills and resources. What they lacked was people. As long as the disciples were talented enough, it was actually not a problem for a sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to raise an expert. It was the same for the other sections. Therefore, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the martial arts sects in the celestial Daoist were very idle. They were so idle that they could casually preach about the Tao. Even people from opposing sects were allowed to listen to their preaching. In fact, if one's preaching could convince the other party, it would be a very honorable thing to do. But in the lower realm, the Jianghu forces could be said to be scheming and fighting all day long. They fought for resources, talents, and even reputation. From the moment they stepped into the Jianghu, most of the low-level Jianghu forces were already prepared to kill and be killed. Of course, they would not give in so easily. This could also be compared to the environment of Green City. In the harsher Green City, the warriors there did not care about their own lives. For them, fighting and fighting was fighting against the heavens. If they did not fight, they would die. This kind of mentality was naturally different. Of course, when the Daoist forces surrendered, it was more convenient for Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was still not interested in the kung fu books of these forces. He just took out some historical secrets recorded in their sects and flipped through them one by one, looking for clues. After searching for half a month, but to no avail, Chu Xiu did not bother to continue looking, and was ready to go to Fanglin County. After coming to the Daoist, in fact, Chu Xiu was still a little nervous. After all, he was an outsider, a person who did not belong here. Fortunately, after he came to the Daoist, he met people who were not as strong as him, such as Lin Fengwu. If Chu Xiu was like the unlucky guy who came to the mortal world from the Daoist heaven and met Fang Qinglan, a strong man of the metaphysic state, and was killed as soon as he came out, he would definitely cry. But now, through the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, Chu Xiu had a certain foundation in the Daoist, so he did not need to be as careful as before. As soon as Chu Xiu walked out of the mountain gate, Lin Fengwu caught up with him. She followed behind Chu Xiu and said, "Senior Chu, are you going to go out?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I have been out for so long, but I haven't had a look around Fanglin County yet." Hearing this, Lin Fengwu immediately said, "That's great. Let me be your guide." Without hesitation, Chu Xiu just nodded casually. He could see that Lin Fengwu seemed to have a good impression of him, or maybe it was just awe and respect. In fact, Lin Fengwu's thoughts were similar to Chu Xiu's. She did not have the character of a lady from a noble family. On the contrary, she was very strong and persistent in martial arts. It was also because of this character that Lin Fengwu could surpass Zhao Yangyu's strength even though she was a woman. When she met Chu Xiu, who was not much older than she was, but in terms of martial arts, she could only look up to him. Only then did she develop these slightly complicated thoughts. Following behind Chu Xiu, Lin Fengwu said cautiously, "Senior Chu, you are so strong now, but you don't have any secret or anything like that." In the past, Lin Fengwu would not have dared to ask this. But now that Chu Xiu had become a foreign elder of the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, and he had even helped the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect become the #1 sect in Fanglin County, their relationship was naturally not ordinary, so she was a little bolder. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Secret? The path of martial arts is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. How can there be any secret? Even if you have the supply of countless heavenly and earthly treasures, allowing you to advance very quickly, the power obtained from external objects will also make your level unstable, and your combat strength will be far inferior to martial artists of the same level. You only need to remember one thing. Martial arts is the path of war and killing." Lin Fengwu said doubtfully, "But I heard the Heaven and Earth Arcane Insight Powerhouse from the Eastern Region's Imperial Sky Pavilion giving a lecture. He said a lot about sensing heaven and earth, as well as karma, and so on." Chu Xiu looked at Lin Fengwu and said, "Do you have the right to sense this world now? Do you have the right to interfere with karma?" Lin Fengwu blushed and shook her head. She did not understand these things back then, so how could she know? That's it. That powerhouse's martial arts belongs to that powerhouse's comprehension. You haven't reached his level yet, so why do you want to learn from him? Based on your current level, the most effective way to increase your strength is to continuously fight and kill others. The strength that is tempered in fierce battles of life and death is the most stable and strongest. As for those things that powerhouse said, you won't understand until you reach his level. But when you reach that level, you will naturally understand without anyone teaching you." Lin Fengwu nodded as if she was suddenly enlightened. What Chu Xiu said was actually much more practical than the great principles that those powerhouses preached. At the very least, Chu Xiu gave her many suggestions on what she should do now, and not a bunch of extremely mysterious things that people could not understand and could only guess randomly. As they chatted along the way, Lin Fengwu had already brought Chu Xiu to the largest city in Fanglin County, the Anzhou Prefecture. Chapter 1096. The Anzhou Prefecture was the center of the entire Fanglin County. It was also the largest prefecture in the entire county. After entering the Anzhou Prefecture, Chu Xiu looked around. Apart from the architectural style, it was similar to the prefectures in the lower realm. The only difference was that the martial arts culture in the Anzhou Prefecture was very strong. This was not only reflected in the number of cultivators, but also in the surrounding shops. After all, the prefectures in the lower realm were mainly populated by commoners. Therefore, even in a capital like Yanjing City, the surrounding shops were mostly made up of cloth stores and medicine shops for commoners. In the Anzhou Prefecture, there were all sorts of weapons, cultivation elixirs, and all sorts of miscellaneous items used by cultivators to set up formations and refine weapons. Among them, there were even some shops that openly sold ancient books of cultivation methods. Although they were all inferior goods, no one in the lower realm would openly open a shop to sell ancient books of cultivation methods. Lin Fengwu introduced to Chu Xiu, the Anzhou Prefecture was the core of Fanglin County from the very beginning. After our ancestors came to the Daoist 10,000 years ago, the Anzhou Prefecture was the first city in Fanglin County. The entire Fanglin County was spread out with the Anzhou Prefecture as the core. Chu Xiu nodded and suddenly asked, "Who's in charge of the Anzhou Prefecture?" There was no imperial court in the Daoist. Therefore, there had to be someone in charge of the prefectures where people gathered. The prefectural governor is in charge. Then, who's in charge of the prefectural governor? Lin Fengwu said, the entire Fonglin County is under the jurisdiction of the Eastern Region's great sect, the Imperial Sky Pavilion. The prefectural governor is very powerful. I heard that he used to be an inner sect managing elder of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. He came to Fonglin County to be the prefectural governor because he's very powerful. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow. The Daoist used sects to govern the pugilistic world. Although it might not be as detailed as the imperial court in the lower realm, the Daoist martial arts culture was strong and there were too many cultivators. It was more effective to use such a method to govern. Even a major sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect is under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Then what does this county governor usually manage? The people of Fonglin County were already used to being under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. When Chu Xiu asked such a sudden question, Lin Fengwu thought about it and said, it doesn't seem like we're in charge of too many things. The entire Fonglin County is under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. Naturally, we have to pay a portion of the tribute to the Imperial Heaven Pavilion every year. However, it's not a lot. At the very least, the sects in Fonglin County can afford it. Apart from that, it seemed like the county governor did not need to care too much. It was said that when the ancestors first came to the Daoist, this place was filled with dense forests and countless ferocious beasts. The Dilua mountain range was practically a forbidden area. Therefore, in the beginning, the various county governors were also in charge of hunting the ferocious beasts and guarding against their attacks. Thousands of years later, most of those vicious beasts had been hunted down and refined into pills and weapons. Some of the more precious ones had even gone extinct, causing the price of vicious beast materials to increase by several times. Therefore, the county governor seems to be very free now. Unless a few sects cause too much of a ruckus and someone begs the county governor to pay him enough tribute, the county governor will only step in to mediate the conflict between the two sections. At this point, Lin Fengwu said a little awkwardly, actually, I misunderstood Father when I objected to him giving the Heaven Absolute Sword Manual to the three sections. Father's original plan was to stall for time and teach the county governor the Heaven Absolute Sword Manual in exchange for his mediation. He would rather give everything to the county governor than let them take advantage of the situation. Who would have thought that I would fall out with those sects and be hunted down by them? Father's plan fell through. Chu Xiu did not care about Lin Fengwu's awkwardness. He stroked his chin and thought that the Imperial Heaven Pavilion had some talents. The county governor of Fonglin County seemed to be ruling by doing nothing and did not oppress the other sects too much. However, just based on how they tried to smooth things over, who knew how many benefits they had received? If there was conflict between the two sects, the county governor would side with whoever gave the items. Although it was said that he was mediating, the side that had the upper hand would definitely lose out. Therefore, in the end, the only one who benefited was the county governor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. The other sects got nothing. The reason why the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was able to successfully destroy the three sects this time was because Chu Xiu had acted too quickly. He did not give them a chance to react at all. If he had been a little slower and these people had caused a ruckus to the county governor's office, the county governor might have intervened. The other sects in Fonglin County did not resist the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Apart from the few reasons that Chu Xiu had speculated, the county governor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion was also one of the reasons. They were even used to spending money to avert disasters. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had gone overboard, it was not to the point where they would lose their lives. Therefore, they could still tolerate it and were willing to tolerate it. Regarding the county governor of Fonglin County, Chu Xiu noted it down. As long as he continued to develop in Fonglin County, he would have to deal with this county governor in the future. Just as Chu Xiu was thinking about this, Lin Fengwu's expression suddenly turned ugly. Chu Xiu followed Lin Fengwu's gaze and saw a group of young martial artists eating and drinking in a restaurant. They were said to be young, but in fact, their cultivation was not weak. The lowest realm was the unity of heaven and man. Two of them had even reached the real pellet state. In the lower realm, this kind of strength was enough to be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Enemies? Lin Fengwu let out a long breath and shook her head. Not exactly enemies, but there are some grudges. One of them is Wen Donglai, the young master of the Wind Smell Pavilion. He once pursued me a few years ago, but I rejected him, so he held a grudge. The Wind Smell Pavilion master is in charge of all kinds of news and intelligence. He also has the largest martial arts trading hall in the Anzhou prefecture, which is used to accept martial artists to trade various things, as well as all kinds of news and intelligence. Wen Donglai took advantage of this and spread all kinds of rumors about me in the trading hall. During that time, I didn't even dare to go out. In the end, it was my father who came forward and made a big deal out of it. Only then did the Wind Smell Pavilion withdraw the rumors. However, the Wind Smell Pavilion has a good relationship with many martial arts forces in Fanglin County. I couldn't do anything to the other party, so this matter was left unsettled. Chu Xiu's attention at this time was not on Lin Fengwu's little grudge, but on the Wind Smell Pavilion. The other party turned out to specialize in selling intelligence, which also belonged to the category of anemophilia. It could be said to be a low-level version of the wind-sweeping building. Since this is the case, will there be any detailed information in the other party's hands? At this time, the few young masters in the restaurant also saw Lin Fengwu. One of them, who was dressed in bright yellow luxurious clothes, stood up and sneered, "So it's Miss Lin. Miss Lin, you're doing very well now. You found a backer, and even your 9 Phoenix Sword sect is showing off in Fanglin County. Your influence is even greater than the prefectural governor's manor. I wonder if Miss Lin has slept with them personally." Haha. Lin Fengwu was so angry that her face turned red. She pointed the sword in her hand at the young master and shouted, "Wen Donglai. If you talk nonsense again, believe it or not, I will tear your mouth apart." Seeing Lin Fengwu's fierce look, Wen Donglai subconsciously took half a step back. This woman was very scary when she went crazy. She wasn't just talking tough, but she could really do such things. However, when he thought of the number of people on his side today, what was there to be afraid of? As soon as he straightened his back, someone next to him pulled him and said, "Brother Wen, forget it. Now that the 9 Phoenix Sword sect is in the limelight, and with the help of the primeval successor, they may be the next Cold River city. Don't provoke Lin Fengwu at this time." Wen Donglai would have been fine if he hadn't heard this, but he immediately sneered and said, "Next Cold River city? Does the 9 Phoenix Sword sect deserve it? The one who helped Cold River City rise is the most famous of the primeval sovereigns, the Galaxy Unfettered Cultivator, a supreme powerhouse who could debate with the 3 pristine temples Dao in the past. What about the primeval successor of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect? He's sneaking around and doesn't even dare to reveal his name. Who knows who he is? Don't imagine the primeval successor to be too mysterious. Don't forget that in Daoist history, many primeval sovereign successors were expelled because they didn't meet the standards. Many primeval sovereign successors met with accidents along the way, causing the inheritance of their lineage to be damaged and their strength to plummet. These are all common occurrences. Don't be fooled by the 9 Phoenix Sword sect's glory now. We don't know what will happen in the future. The moment he said this, Wen Donglai and the others immediately felt an immense pressure descend upon them. And that pressure came from the young man next to Lin Fengwu. It was just a simple pressure, but it had already caused the weather to change, causing the sky above Wen Donglai and the others to instantly be covered with dark clouds. With a loud bang, Wen Donglai and the others finally couldn't hold on anymore. The floor under their feet cracked, and they fell from the second floor to the first floor. Chu Xiu walked up to them and said indifferently, "I'm not used to raising my head to talk to people. Also, who was the one who said that he didn't know who I was? Now, I'll stand up and show him who I really am." At this moment, everyone knew who the person in front of them was. The entire Fanglin prefecture knew Chu Xiu's name, but they didn't know what Chu Xiu looked like. Apart from the people from the 9 Phoenix Sword sect, the speed at which the other 3 sects were annihilated was too fast. It was so fast that they didn't even have time to react before they were killed by Chu Xiu. Coupled with the fact that Chu Xiu had been living in seclusion during this period, the only cultivators who knew what Chu Xiu looked like were the people from the 9 Phoenix Sword sect. Although Wen Donglai had been clamoring about the primeval sovereign successor, when Chu Xiu really appeared in front of him, he was so scared that he couldn't even speak. At this time, a middle-aged cultivator of the true fire spirit refinement stage walked over from the other side of the long street. When he saw this scene, his expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly walked up to Chu Xiu, bowed respectfully, and said, "Are you the primeval sovereign successor, young Master Chu?" A group of ignorant children, talking nonsense here after drinking some yellow wine. I hope young Master Chu can be magnanimous and not stoop to their level. Chapter 1097. This true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist who rushed over could be said to be extremely humble, even to the extent that Chu Xiu could not bear to reprimand the other party. Chu Xiu asked indifferently, "Which family are you from?" That middle-aged man smiled and said, "This one is Toyama Zhou family's family head, Zhou Fang. My son is insensible and mixed with them. Please forgive him, young Master Chu." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Actually, I really hate it when people tell me not to lower myself to someone's level. The person involved is not you, so what right do you have to say that? I won't lower myself to his level, then lower myself to yours, how about it?" Hearing Chu Xiu say so, that middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed. But Chu Xiu continued, "But I, Chu Xiu, am not an unreasonable person. Your son did not say anything wrong to the others. I naturally won't blame them." Just as Zhou Fang just heaved a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "But some people have to be responsible for their actions when they say something wrong. For example, this Wind Smell Pavilion fellow. I'll detain him. You should know the Wind Smell Pavilion's people. Tell them to hand over all the information in the Wind Smell Pavilion and their various ancient books to the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, and his son will be fine. This is a small punishment as a warning to others. This is equivalent to a lesson." Zhou Fang's expression could not help changing slightly when he heard this. Chu Xiu doing this could be said to want the Wind Smell Pavilion's life. For other sects, even if Chu Xiu wanted their cultivation methods, it did not matter. As long as there were people, they could still make a comeback. But for the Wind Smell Pavilion, those information and so on were accumulated over hundreds of years. It could be said to be where their lifeline lay. In the end, it was taken away by Chu Xiu, then the Wind Smell Pavilion might as well just disband. Just when Zhou Fang was about to say something, Chu Xiu directly said, "Zhou clan head, this matter has nothing to do with you. You are only responsible for delivering a message. You should be able to do such a small thing, right?" Under the intense gaze of Chu Xiu, Zhou Fang had no choice but to nod. After such an incident, Chu Xiu didn't have the mood to stroll around. He directly asked Lin Fengwu to bring Wen Donglai back to the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect. After Chu Xiu left, the young master of the Zhou clan muttered, "This Gu Zun's successor is a little too overbearing and petty. Brother Wen only said a few bad things about him and he wants the lifeline of the Wind Smell Pavilion?" As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Fang slapped him across the face. The young master of the Zhou family looked at his father in disbelief. In all these years, the number of times his father had hit him could be counted on one hand. "Shut up, unfilial son. Remember, don't say things you shouldn't say. It doesn't matter if others are overbearing or petty, you don't have the right to say anything. You just need to watch your mouth." The young master of the Zhou family was shocked when he saw his father's serious expression. He didn't dare say another word. Zhou Fang looked in the direction in which Chu Xiu had left and sighed. A storm is coming. Fanglin County is no longer peaceful. In the past, Fanglin County had been peaceful for so many years, not because the warriors of Fanglin County were easy to talk to, but because everyone's strength was about the same. They fought with each other and it was only a small skirmish. Therefore, in the entire Fanglin County, there had not been an extermination of a family for 200 or 300 years. Now, with the arrival of Chu Xiu, this powerful force had completely broken the peace of Fanglin County. Everyone would have to be careful in the future. After returning to the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect with Wen Donglai, Chu Xiu asked Lin Fengwu to lock Wen Donglai up in a random place while he went to look through the information records. When Zhao Liangyu saw that Chu Xiu and Lin Fengwu had returned together, he was burning with jealousy. However, his expression changed when he saw Wen Donglai behind them. After Lin Fengwu sealed Wen Donglai's cultivation and locked him in an empty secret room, Zhao Liangyu found an opportunity to enter the secret room. The moment he saw Zhao Liangyu, Wen Donglai cried out emotionally, "Brother Zhao, save me." The entire Nine Phoenix Sword sect might not know that Zhao Liangyu was actually good friends with Wen Donglai. The two of them had a good relationship. The last time Lin Fengwu and Wen Donglai had clashed, Zhao Liangyu had actually been the instigator. Zhao Liangyu had been afraid that Lin Fengwu would leave him and marry someone else, so he had deliberately let Wen Donglai ruin her reputation. Then, he had comforted Lin Fengwu and expressed that he didn't despise her and so on. He hadn't expected the matter to blow up in the end, so much so that it couldn't be contained. It was only when Lin Yazi appeared that the matter was resolved. Zhao Liangyu hurriedly asked, "Brother Wen, what's wrong? Why are you locked up here?" Wen Donglai had a gloomy look on his face as he said, "Isn't it all because of Chu Xiu? This person even said that he's some primeval successor, but in the end, he's so narrow-minded. I only said a few bad things about him, and he captured me and locked me up here. He even wanted my father to exchange all the information records and ancient books of the Windswept Pavilion for me. He's practically asking for the lifeblood of the Windswept Pavilion." Zhao Liangyu frowned and said, "Chu Xiu isn't a good person. You could have provoked anyone, but you had to provoke him. This is troublesome. You must know that even I have to avoid him in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect." Wen Donglai gritted his teeth and said, "Let me out first. When I go back, I'll ask my father to come forward and ask the prefectural governor to help talk things over. I don't believe that he won't give face to others, but could it be that he won't give face to the prefectural governor as well?" Hearing that Wen Donglai wanted him to let him out, Zhao Liangyu hesitated. He was captured by Chu Xiu after all. If he let him out now, wouldn't it be a little bad? Wouldn't it offend Chu Xiu? Seeing Zhao Liangyu's hesitant look, Wen Donglai snorted coldly and said, "Brother Zhao, you and I have been friends for so many years. You won't refuse this favor, right? Don't forget, I helped you a great deal before. Say, if the matter with Lin Fengwu the other time is known by your master and Lin Fengwu, what do they think?" Hearing this, Zhao Liangyu's expression involuntarily changed. That matter was also because he was burning with jealousy back then, and he acted a little too rashly. Now, if Master and Junior Sister found out, he wouldn't be able to stay in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect anymore. Rubbing his head, Zhao Liangyu suddenly said, "You're saying that this matter was entirely decided by Chu Xiu alone, and Master doesn't know?" Wen Donglai nodded and said, "Anyway, from the beginning to the end, your master never showed up, so he probably doesn't know." Zhao Liangyu's eyes darted around and said, "I can let you out, but you have to let your father go to the prefectural governor to help suppress Chu Xiu." Wen Donglai snorted lightly and said, "Don't worry, I know that even without you telling me. Since I've already offended Chu Xiu, then if I don't want to live with my tail between my legs in Fonglin Commandery in the future, I can only think of a way to suppress Chu Xiu." Zhao Liangyu nodded and thought of a way to get an ordinary Nine Phoenix Sword sect disciple's uniform, and just like that, he smoothly brought Wen Donglai out. A sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had never imprisoned anyone before, and they didn't even have a jail cell. That secret chamber was only used by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect disciples for closed-door cultivation. Zhao Liangyu used his identity as the eldest senior brother to bring Wen Donglai out, so it wasn't considered difficult. After sending Wen Donglai out, Zhao Liangyu went straight to his master's room and prepared to complain. When Lin Yazi saw Zhao Liangyu, he said with a warm smile, "Oh, Liangyu. What's the matter?" Lin Yazi actually thought very highly of Zhao Liangyu. After all, he was a disciple that he had taught for more than a decade, and Zhao Liangyu had always been obedient and sensible. Later on, he even treated Zhao Liangyu as his son-in-law. Zhao Liangyu said with a solemn expression, "Master, Chu Xiu is trying to destroy the foundation of our Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Lin Yazi frowned and said, Liangyu, don't speak nonsense. Brother Chu is a foreign elder of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect now, and everything he did was for the sake of helping my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. It would be bad if others found out that you're slandering him in secret. Zhao Liangyu said hatefully, Master, do you know what Chu Xiu has done? He actually captured the Wind Smell Pavilions when Dong Lion threatened him to hand over all the information, records, books, and other things in the Wind Smell Pavilion. Those are the Wind Smell Pavilion's lifeline. He acted so tyrannically and without any scruples. In the end, all this hatred will fall on our Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Master, if you were in the Wind Smell Pavilion and were threatened like this, would you fight them to the death? Fortunately, I discovered it in time and let Wen Donglai go. Otherwise, this matter would have blown up and even reached the prefectural governor. That would have been terrible. Lin Yazi suddenly smacked his head. He had been a little carried away recently and had forgotten that the prefectural governor was still around. Although the prefectural governor didn't care much about Fonglin Prefecture's affairs and wouldn't investigate if the people didn't raise a complaint, they wouldn't be able to do anything if the other party was forced into a corner and offered all the benefits to the prefectural governor to make peace. Although Chu Xiu was Gu Zun's successor, the prefectural governor was backed by a top-notch sect that had existed for 10,000 years, the Imperial Sky Pavilion. At that moment, a cold voice was heard. You let that brat go? Zhao Liangyu turned around and saw that Chu Xiu was already standing at the door. Chu Xiu had come to find Lin Yazi to ask about the prefectural governor. He hadn't expected to hear Zhao Liangyu mention that he had let Wen Donglai go as soon as he arrived. He had great use for the Wind Smell Pavilion's items. The clue about Ning Xuanji that Lin Fengwu had found was written by the Pugilistic World's media. Although the Wind Smell Pavilion didn't say that they were the Pugilistic World's media, the things they did were almost the same as the Pugilistic World's media. In the hands of the Wind Smell Pavilion, it was very likely that they had clues about Duguwewa. However, Zhao Liangyu had secretly let Wen Donglai go and had even come to Lin Yazi's place to act first and report later. This had really crossed Chu Xiu's bottom line. Previously, Zhao Liangyu had bared his fangs and brandished his claws in front of Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu hadn't cared. Back then, Chu Xiu had told Lin Fengwu that a giant dragon wouldn't care about the threat of a monkey baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. He wasn't interested in the monkey's territory either. Although he wasn't very broad-minded, he wasn't that petty. However, the premise was that this monkey didn't cause trouble for him. Otherwise, he wouldn't care and would trample this troublesome monkey to death. Chapter 1098. Zhao Liangyu had been caught red-handed for acting first and reporting later. This was indeed a little embarrassing. Zhao Liangyu retreated step by step under Chu Xiu's oppressive gaze. However, he still straightened his neck and said, Chu Xiu, you're a foreign elder of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect now, so you should naturally think for the sake of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Your actions have placed my sect in an unjust and dangerous situation. As a disciple of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, I can't just sit back and watch. Zhao Liangyu spoke with a strong sense of righteousness, but his figure had already involuntarily moved towards Lin Yazi. Chu Xiu said indifferently, it's precisely because I'm a guest of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect that I have to care about some things. If a sect doesn't have rules, then it'll be a mess. No matter how wrong I am, it's not up to you to act first and report later to release him. I can tolerate you stomping your feet and clamoring in front of me, but the condition is that you don't cause trouble for me. I hate trouble, so when I encounter trouble, the last thing I can do is immediately resolve it. Lin Yazi could see that Chu Xiu's expression was a little off. Although he also knew that Zhao Liangyu had indeed been a little rash in this matter, Zhao Liangyu was still a disciple that he had taught for more than a decade. Lin Yazi hurriedly consoled him. Brother Chu, this time it was Liangyu who didn't follow the rules. Don't worry, I'll definitely teach him well later. Before Lin Yazi could finish speaking, Chu Xiu lightly snapped his fingers. In an instant, the power of the blood demon power erupted, and the blood in Zhao Liangyu's entire body boiled. The blood demon power was so powerful and strange that Lin Yazi couldn't react at all. In the next moment, Zhao Lianyu's heart meridian was directly shattered by this powerful and boiling blood. He had let Wen Donglai go, but in the end, he had died for Wen Donglai. Chu Xiu. Lin Yazi immediately looked at Chu Xiu in rage. Zhao Lianyu was a disciple that he had cultivated for more than a decade, and he had even treated him like half a son. In the end, Chu Xiu had actually killed him just like that, and he'd even done it right in front of him. Chu Xiu was simply fearless, so how could he not be furious? Chu Xiu said calmly, "Sect leader Lin, Meng Xinghe helped Cold River City rise in the past because he trusted me. But now, you don't trust me. A disciple of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect openly went against me, yet you chose to side with him. Since it's like this, then where's the dignity of an honored guest like me?" The reason why the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was able to enjoy such glory during this period of time was all because of me. If the Nine Phoenix Sword sect wants to continue enjoying its glory, then it can only advance and kill together with me. During this period of time, I've actually only killed 3 people to the outside world, and the remaining people were all killed by your Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Tell me, do they hate you more or hate me more? Sect leader Lin, don't be half-hearted. You can't turn back now. After saying all this, Chu Xiu directly turned around and left, leaving behind Lin Yazi with a dumbstruck expression and his entire body going cold. Only now did he recall that Zhao Lianyu had actually told him previously that this Chu Xiu wasn't someone easy to deal with, and that he was very dangerous, extremely dangerous. Previously, Chu Xiu's attitude towards him was still considered polite, but now, he finally saw another side of Chu Xiu, a side that caused him to shudder with fear. He didn't dare to fall out with Chu Xiu, and he couldn't fall out with him. Just like Chu Xiu said, his Nine Phoenix Sword sect had enjoyed its glory during this period of time, and they'd killed enough people. So there was already no way back for his Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Up until this moment, a trace of slight regret finally appeared in Lin Yazi's heart. Was it right or wrong for him to find Chu Xiu to be an honored guest? Chu Xiu didn't care about how Lin Yazi thought in his heart. This time, Zhao Lianyu had crossed his bottom line. In fact, Chu Xiu could have found another time to deal with him. Actually, he had insisted on killing Lin Yazi in front of him to give him a warning. Because during this period of time, he realized that Lin Yazi was also a little complacent. He seemed to have forgotten who gave him everything in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. This wasn't a good thing, so Chu Xiu took this opportunity to remind him. To Chu Xiu, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was only a springboard, and the karma between the two had already been settled. He used the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to establish himself in the Daoist, and at the same time, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could obtain practical benefits. As for whether the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could become the next Cold River City, that would depend on themselves. Chu Xiu didn't have the time to play some sect-nurturing game in the Daoist. Zhao Lianyu's death actually didn't cause any ripples or impact in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Zhao Lianyu, the eldest senior brother, didn't have high prestige in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, and it wasn't even as high as Lin Fengwu's. For others, Chu Xiu, the guest elder, could bring them practical benefits, but Zhao Lianyu, the eldest senior brother, didn't bring them any practical benefits other than showing off. After Lin Fengwu heard the news, she didn't show any practical expression other than a deeper level of respect for Chu Xiu. After all, she was already a little impatient with Zhao Lianyu's pestering. But when she thought of what Chu Xiu had said to her before, Lin Fengwu still felt a chill. At this time, in the Wind Smell Pavilion, the pavilion master, Wen Yongtai, was anxious and didn't know what to do. The Zhou family sent someone to pass on Chu Xiu's words to him, which almost made Wen Yongtai vomit blood in anger. He wanted nothing more than to kill his unlucky son. Although the Wind Smell Pavilion didn't claim to be an anemophilia, what they actually did was an anemophilia. In this line of work, although one had to keep talking, the most important thing was to control one's mouth and know what could be said and what could not be said. In the end, Wen Donglai specifically picked the things that could not be said. That mouth of his had already caused trouble more than once or twice. The last time he spread rumors about Lin Fengwu, although Lin Fengwu's reputation was damaged, it also caused the Wind Smell Pavilion's reputation to be criticized. It took a long time for them to recover. In the end, this brat actually caused trouble again. Just as when Dong Lai was thinking about how to deal with this matter, a disciple below reported that when Dong Lai had returned himself. Seeing Wen Dong Lai for the first time, Wen Yongtai scolded angrily, "You unfilial son, you actually have the nerve to come back. Why don't you just die in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect? I'll take it that I don't have a son like you." Although Wen Yongtai scolded him fiercely, Wen Dong Lai chuckled and said, "Dad, if you don't have a son like me, who will take over the Wind Smell Pavilion in the future?" Wen Yongtai snorted coldly and said, "If I hand over the family business to you, it will be ruined by your mouth sooner or later. How did you come back this time? Was it Lin Yazi who let you go?" Wen Yongtai shook his head and said, "It was Zhao Liangyu who let me go. He also told me that Chu Xiu is ruthless. Even if he let me go, he might not let the Wind Smell Pavilion off. Therefore, it's best if we ask the prefectural governor to come forward and suppress Chu Xiu." When Dong Lai scratched his head after hearing that. Actually, he didn't really want to come into contact with the prefectural governor. It should be said that no one in the martial arts world in Fanglin County wanted to come into contact with the prefectural governor. Once you entered the prefectural governor's office, you couldn't leave without taking out most of your family's assets. However, the Wind Smell Pavilion had already offended Primeval's successor. What else could he do but ask for the prefectural governor's help? The prefectural governor's character didn't seem to be easy to get along with. When Dong Lai said, "Father, are you worried that the Wind Smell Pavilion won't be able to handle such a large sum of resources?" When Yongtai snapped, "If it weren't for you, why would I have to spend so much money?" When Dong Lai rolled his eyes and said, "Father, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect is getting more and more overboard in Fanglin County with the support of Chu Xiu. If we don't stop them, I'm afraid they will really dominate the entire county. This isn't a matter that only concerns our Wind Scout Pavilion. Why don't we do this? Father, go to each family and tell them the pros and cons of the matter. Gather the resources and then bring these things to the county governor. Of course, it'll hurt to take out these resources individually, but if all the martial arts world forces in Fanglin County were to take them out together, that's not a big deal." When Yongtai looked at his son in surprise. He didn't expect his son, who was always ignorant and incompetent, to be so smart. Unfortunately, although being smart was useful, strength was the most important thing in the martial arts world. No matter how smart he was, it was useless in the face of strength. However, he didn't have time to think about it. When Dong Lai's suggestion was good. When Yongtai left on the same day to persuade all the martial arts world forces in Fanglin County. The Wind Smell Pavilion was in the business of anemophilia, so it had a good reputation. When Yongtai had personally spoken, and 90% of the forces in Fanglin County were willing to give a portion of their resources to Wen Yongtai. In the end, Wen Yongtai realized that the resources he had gathered were even more than he had expected. Wen Yongtai didn't delay and went straight to the prefectural governor's office in the Anzhou prefecture. The prefectural governor's office was in the center of the entire Anzhou prefecture. It didn't look like a mansion, but more like a fortress built in the city. In fact, this place used to be a fortress that was used to defend against the ferocious beasts that covered the mountains and plains in the dense forest. When Yongtai waited in the city for a full quarter of an hour before a tall, dignified middle-aged man in bright yellow robes walked into the main hall. "I just woke up from my cultivation. I've made Pavilion Master Wen wait for a long time. Please forgive me." The middle-aged man said that, but his tone and attitude were high and mighty. He didn't seem to be forgiving at all. Instead, when Dong Lai stood up and said humbly, "What are you talking about, prefectural governor? I was the one who came down abruptly and disturbed you." The middle-aged man in front of him had an extraordinary identity. In the Imperial Sky Pavilion, he was a deacon elder named Jianghu. Usually, the deacons in the Imperial Sky Pavilion were at the real pellet realm or the true fire spirit refinement realm. They weren't weak, but they were older and didn't have the chance to advance. Jianghu was the same. He had never been treated as a core disciple. In the end, he broke through the deacon position and was specially appointed as an elder by the Imperial Sky Pavilion. This wasn't something ordinary people could do. Chapter 1099. As the prefectural governor of Fenglin County and the representative of the Imperial Sky Pavilion in Fenglin County, Jianghu was impatient with the position. In the eyes of the smaller sects and clans, Jianghu had the backing of a top sect in the eastern region, the Royal Sky Pavilion. He was the protector of a county and countless sects and forces were respectful to him. Therefore, he should be doing well in the martial arts competition. However, Jianghu could not wait to return to the Imperial Sky Pavilion to cultivate. Experts could only improve faster when they were together. Although Jianghu was not a core disciple of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, he was ambitious. In the Imperial Sky Pavilion, the resources could not be compared to being a tyrant here. However, he could receive guidance from a martial immortal and the atmosphere was different. He was not considered old and had not given up on the ambition of advancing further. Therefore, although Jianghu was impatient with the forces from Fenglin County bothering him all the time, he would still step in to solve the problem in time. This was because it could bring him a large amount of resources. When he presented the resources every year, the Imperial Sky Pavilion would naturally remember his contributions. When he had accumulated enough credits, he would be able to apply for a transfer to the Imperial Sky Pavilion from his superiors. In fact, Jianghu criticized the rules of the Imperial Sky Pavilion in his heart. Why did the prefectural governor have to be a heaven and earth enlightenment realm expert? With the influence of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, who would dare to rebel even if they sent a real pellet realm expert? It was such a waste. After all, he had been in this position for more than a decade and had never encountered any troublesome problems. Pavilion Master 1, are you in trouble this time? When Yongtai immediately put on an aggrieved expression and said, Prefectural Governor, the 9 Phoenix Sword sect is too much. Lin Yazi accidentally found a primeval lord's successor and joined forces with him to dominate the martial arts world of Fenglin County. The Jianghu sect and the other 2 forces have already fallen into their hands. Now, they are bullying the martial arts forces of Fenglin County even more. If this goes on, I'm afraid they will be more powerful than you, Prefectural Governor. Jianghu did not care about Wen Yongtai's provocation. He represented the Imperial Sky Pavilion. No matter how much trouble they caused, even if they dominated the entire Fenglin County, they would still have to listen to the Imperial Sky Pavilion's orders and offer offerings. Hence, as long as they maintained their respect, Jianghu would not care even if they destroyed their families. What piqued his interest was the fact that the other party was Gu Zun's successor. Over the years, quite a number of Gu Zun's descendants had come out to train, but there were also people who used the name of Gu Zun's descendants to swindle people. Ancient sovereign successor? To be able to encounter the 9 Phoenix Sword sect so coincidentally, could he be a scammer? Which primordial sovereign successor is he? When Yongtai shook his head and said, I don't know about this. It seems that even Lin Yazi doesn't know. However, his strength and age are very similar to Gu Zun's successor. Aside from them, no one else in the outside world can raise such outstanding young experts. Jianghu rubbed his chin and said, Interesting, does the 9 Phoenix Sword sect want to become Cold River City? Seeing that Jianghu did not reply for a long time, Wen Yongtai secretly cursed at his insatiable greed. However, he obediently handed over a secret space box and said, Lord Prefectural Governor, this is just a small gift. Please come forward and restore peace to Fenglin County. Jianghu did not stand on ceremony and took the secret space box directly. He laughed and said, Don't worry, the sky of Fenglin County is still in the hands of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. No one else can touch it or take it away. In the 9 Phoenix Sword sect's secret seclusion chamber, Chu Xiu was trying to connect with heaven and earth to control this power. During this time, Chu Xiu was not only checking the information and records of the sects, but he also did not give up on cultivating. It had to be said that the Daoist environment was too good, so good that it somewhat exceeded Chu Xiu's expectations. This place was even closer to the sky. When he was in the lower realm, Chu Xiu had gone into seclusion for a long time to find the bottleneck of the heaven and earth illumination realm. In the end, apart from condensing his power a little, he did not find anything. But in this place, Chu Xiu was able to grasp a hazy rhythm. Although it wasn't very clear, at least he had a general idea of what it was. Compared to the lower realm, this place was indeed heaven, a heaven for cultivators. At this moment, Lin Fengwu hurriedly ran over and knocked on the door, shouting in a low voice, "Senior Chu, bad news. The prefectural governor is here." Chu Xiu opened the door and raised his eyebrows. "Oh. He's quite fast." The last time he heard Lin Fengwu talk about the prefectural governor, he knew that he would have to deal with him sooner or later. He had caused such a huge commotion in Fonglin County that the prefectural governor, as the ruler of Fonglin County, could not ignore it. However, Chu Xiu did not expect the prefectural governor to come so quickly. In the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect's guest hall, Lin Yazi was respectfully receiving Jianghu. His attitude could even be considered humble. Compared to the lower realm, the Daoist's rules were much stricter. In the sphere of influence controlled by the top sects, no voices of disobedience were allowed. When Chu Xiu walked into the guest hall and saw the prefectural governor, he also sighed in his heart. He had seen many heaven and earth illumination realm powerhouses in the lower realm, and Shang Tianliang had even fought for him. However, those heaven and earth illumination realm existences in the lower realm were all supreme-level figures, but in the Daoist, they could only be a prefectural governor. This difference was a little too big. Of course, this was only from Chu Xiu's perspective. In the eyes of Lin Yazi and the others, the prefectural governor was also an incredible big shot. When he saw Chu Xiu, Lin Yazi hurriedly introduced him. "This is the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect's foreign delegate, young Master Chu Xiu, Guzun's successor. This is the Imperial Sky Pavilion's managing elder and Fonglin County's prefectural governor, Lord Jianghu." When Jianghu introduced himself to others, he would always say that he was the Imperial Sky Pavilion's managing elder first before saying that he was the prefectural governor of Fonglin County. Everyone in Fonglin County knew this, so they would introduce him that way. "So it's the prefectural governor. I was cultivating earlier and couldn't make it in time. My apologies for not being able to make it in time." Chu Xiu cupped his fists casually. Jianghu nodded casually and suddenly asked, "You said that you're Guzun's successor. May I know who your master is?" Jianghu's tone was interrogative, causing Chu Xiu to be slightly taken aback. It seemed like he had overestimated his identity as Guzun's successor. It seemed like Jianghu didn't buy it. At the moment, in Jianghu's eyes, Chu Xiu's identity as Guzun's successor was not even certain. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu was the real deal, there was no need for him to be too respectful because he was not afraid of Chu Xiu. The major Daoist factions did not want to provoke Guzun's lineage because Guzun was only focused on the pinnacle of martial arts and had no conflict of interest with them. Therefore, they would not provoke them if they could, but that did not mean that they were afraid of them. No matter how strong Guzun was, he only had a single successor and only had one expert. However, the Imperial Sky Pavilion was one of the top factions in the eastern region. They had more than one expert and their influence was not something Guzun could compare to. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "My apologies, my lineage was once defeated in a battle. From then on, my lineage will not reveal its name until we defeat our enemy or his successor." In truth, Chu Xiu had read many ancient records in the lower realm and knew the names of some of the ancient experts, but he did not dare to speak blindly. He could say that he was a Guzun's successor, but he did not know if those warriors with names in the records had become Guzun or if their inheritance had been passed down to the present. Therefore, he came up with this excuse and gave himself a reason to search for clues about Dugu Weiwei. He believed that, given Dugu Weiwei's personality, the Daoist would not be peaceful if he came to the Daoist continent. He must have fought with many people, and perhaps one of them was a Guzun. As for the origin of his cultivation art, it was even easier to explain. As long as it was a cultivation art that belonged to Dugu Weiwei, it must have been comprehended by the ancestor of his lineage when he fought against Dugu Weiwei with his life on the line. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. If you want to defeat your opponent, you must first understand your opponent's cultivation art. This is very normal. Jianghu snorted and said, inconvenient to reveal? Very well, I'm not interested in knowing. However, you must restrain yourself from what you did in Fanglin Prefecture. Only the prefectural governor's office can collect tributes from the major sections. No one else has the right. And the Wind Sense Pavilion, the child said the wrong thing and has been taught a lesson. Let's forget about this matter. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, what do you mean, prefectural governor? Although I led the 9 Phoenix Sword sect to attack Fanglin Prefecture, I did not violate the Imperial Sky Pavilion's rules, did I? No matter how many sects I destroyed, the tributes I paid to the prefectural governor's office were not reduced at all. Now that you want me to restrain myself, what about the expenditure I expended previously? What about the disciples of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect who died when they attacked and occupied the mountain gate? Jianghu stared at Chu Xiu and a faint coercion emerged from his body. I don't care how you calculate it. All you need to know is that in Fanglin Prefecture, my words are the rules. It doesn't matter if you're the real or fake successor of the ancient venerate. As long as you're in Fanglin Prefecture, you must abide by my rules. Lin Yazi, who was standing at the side, kept shooting looks at Chu Xiu's envoy, telling him to quickly submit. Only then did he realize that Chu Xiu was a little stubborn. In terms of strength, the other party was a heaven and earth mystic illumination realm expert. In terms of background, the other party had the Imperial Sky Pavilion behind him. He might not necessarily be afraid of his master. What else could he do other than submit at a time like this? However, Chu Xiu taught Lin Yazi a lesson. Sometimes, the more you back down, the more the other party would take advantage of you. Chu Xiu had given Jianghu a lot of face earlier. In Fanglin Prefecture, he was willing to act within the Imperial Sky Pavilion's rules. Unfortunately, there was someone who did not want to abide by the rules. Since they could not be reasoned with, he could only resort to violence. Chapter 1100. Chu Xiu was a man who could endure silently, but at the same time, he was not willing to endure silently. If one had the strength, who would be willing to lower their heads and lie low? Moreover, Chu Xiu was a man who would climb on someone's nose. Back then, he had borrowed Zhong Xinxiu's promise and dared to fool Jun Wuxian and the entire orthodox martial arts world. Now, even though he had come to the Daoist continent and arrived in a foreign world, Chu Xiu still had the guts to not back down because of his illusory identity as the successor of a supreme. Moreover, he could see from Jianghu's eyes that this prefectural governor was not that resolute. Taking a step forward, Chu Xiu said calmly, are the words of the prefectural governor the rules? Doesn't that mean that the prefectural governor thinks that you are more powerful than the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion? Why, after being a local tyrant for so long, do you think that you are the real emperor? Lin Yazi's expression changed when he heard these sarcastic words. This was going to offend the prefectural governor to death. Jianghu's face was filled with rage as he shouted, how dare you! As Jianghu's voice fell, a small sword appeared from his sleeve. In the next moment, the small sword disappeared and appeared in front of Chu Xiu almost instantaneously. There was no strong fluctuation of heaven and earth essence qi, nor was there any explosion of stellar qi. However, this small sword was extremely dangerous. If it was anyone else, they would have been pierced through by this sword. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu seemed to have predicted this. The moment Jianghu made his move, he had already opened his hand and grasped the small sword in his hand. Previously, when Chu Xiu was fighting against the head-piercing 7 arrows, he had tried to push the heaven sun gazing at air to its peak. Although Chu Xiu had not ignited his primordial spirit and was unable to reach the peak of the heaven sun gazing at air, he had still reached that realm. Therefore, his understanding of the heaven sun gazing at air had improved. Jianghu's small sword was not much bigger than the dagger chief. It looked small and exquisite, but it was a genuine divine weapon. But now, Chu Xiu's fleshly body had already reached the pinnacle. The internal true fire and the world-extinguishing flame burned at the same time. The gold-and-silver internal true fire burned the small sword, causing it to turn red. The apocalyptic flame followed the small sword and headed straight for Jianghu. Jianghu snorted coldly and immediately sheathed his sword. Stars revolved around him as he stood in front of the apocalyptic fire. In the next moment, Jianghu pointed out with 4 fingers on his right hand. Earth, wind, water, and fire, the 4 extreme powers condensed into a single point and gathered in his 4 fingers. The power was so concentrated that it was only the size of a bean, but it caused the surrounding space to tremble. Even Lin Yazi was shocked by the power. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. At this moment, he didn't feel any pressure. Instead, he felt a little strange. When he fought with Fang Changhe and the others, he felt that the Daoist warriors of the same level were too weak. They were far weaker than the warriors of the same level in the lower realm. Jianghu's strength wasn't that strong. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't feel as much pressure as he did when he fought with Ling Yunzi. Of course, this wasn't because Jianghu was too weak. It was because the current Chu Xiu was much stronger than the Chu Xiu when he fought with Ling Yunzi at the peak of Kunlun Mountain. At this moment, Chu Xiu felt that Jianghu's strength wasn't too shocking. However, his understanding of the martial way and the various strange changes in the rules of power were completely different from the martial way in the lower realm. In the past 10,000 years, the inheritance of the ancient martial way and the martial way in the lower realm had been severed. Both sides shared the same origin, but in terms of the details, they had walked 2 different paths. In the face of Jianghu's attack, Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands. It was the colorless sealing palm seal. However, the colorless sealing palm seal that Chu Xiu formed this time was very small. It was only a foot long and the space around it was distorted. However, it was devouring all the energy around it, including the force of Jianghu's 4 fingers. Lin Yazi even had a feeling that if Chu Xiu changed the direction of this seal technique, his entire 9 Phoenix sword sect would be dragged into it. The colorless sealing palm seal was like a Mount Sumeru in a mustard seed. At this moment, Chu Xiu had used the true essence of this seal technique and pushed it to a peak. A peak that even its creator, holy monk Tan Yuan, had never reached. Jianghu couldn't help but frown when he saw that Chu Xiu had blocked his attack. In the next moment, the back of his head glowed with a golden light and the power of his primordial spirit transformed into a divine shadow. It formed a seal with its hands and charged at Chu Xiu. This was a primordial spirit's secret technique. The power of his primordial spirit in Chu Xiu's mind also flourished. He didn't even use the power of his inner demons. Instead, he directly transformed the power of his primordial spirit into the appearance of the great Mahakala. His primordial spirit fire bloomed from his 3rd eye and tangled with the great Mahakala. Jianghu suddenly retracted his primordial spirit fire and looked at Chu Xiu in shock. The great Mahakala of the Sanskrit sect. Who are you? Jianghu hadn't recognized the apocalyptic fire before. The Sanskrit sect was located far away in the western regions and rarely came to the eastern regions. Therefore, he had never fought with the Sanskrit sect's martial artists. However, the great Mahakala that the Sanskrit sect worshipped was very famous. It was impossible for him not to know about it. Chu Xiu said lightly, "One of my ancestors had some friendship with the leader of the Sanskrit sect's great Mahakala palace." Is there anything strange about that? Jianghu didn't say anything, nor did he continue to attack. He only stared at Chu Xiu for a long time before he laughed heartily. Guzun's successor, you live up to your reputation. You may have the strength to break my rules, but if you dare to violate the Imperial Sky Pavilion's rules, I won't be the next person to come here. After saying that, Jianghu turned around and left. Lin Yazi looked at all of this with a dumbfounded expression, unable to react. Just now, Jianghu had angrily thought that Chu Xiu had challenged his dignity. Why was he letting it go now? He didn't seem to have lost. What's going on? Chu Xiu said lightly, "Do you think the prefectural governor is an idiot?" Lin Yazi hurriedly shook his head and said, "Of course not. The Imperial Sky Pavilion has witnessed the prefectural governor's abilities. I heard that among the counties that the Imperial Sky Pavilion controls, the prefectural governor is also the most outstanding. Since the prefectural governor isn't an idiot, why would he fight to the death with someone that he doesn't have 100% confidence in taking down? Just for the little things that the other sects have offered him? Isn't he a little too worthless?" Chu Xiu had sensed from the beginning that although the prefectural governor seemed overbearing, he had been testing him all along to find out his true identity and strength. Earlier on, they had exchanged 3 blows and had suppressed their powers to the limit. They didn't even break a single tile. It was clear that they both understood each other's intentions. If he could easily tell that Chu Xiu was an impostor, or if Chu Xiu gave in slightly, Chu Xiu would probably be at Jianghu's mercy. After testing the waters, he realized that Chu Xiu wasn't that easy to deal with. Naturally, he wouldn't force his way through. What was dignity? All Jianghu wanted was practical benefits. He would be able to return to the Imperial Sky Pavilion after a while. There was no need for him to fight to the death with a fellow of unknown origin. Therefore, as long as Chu Xiu didn't touch his reverse scale and violate the Imperial Sky Pavilion's rules, he wouldn't really fight to the death with Chu Xiu. After Jianghu left the 9 Phoenix Sword sect, Wen Yongtai, who had been waiting outside for news from Jianghu, immediately rushed up to him and asked, "Prefectural Governor, what's the situation inside? Is Chu Xiu real or fake?" Jianghu patted his shoulder and said calmly, "Go back and pack up. Send over the things that Chu Xiu wants. If you admit defeat, he probably won't annihilate the entire Wind Surveillance Pavilion." When Yongtai was stunned. "Even you, Prefectural Governor, can't defeat Chu Xiu. What cultivation realm is he at?" Jianghu scoffed. "What nonsense are you talking about? What do you mean by I can't defeat Chu Xiu? I didn't lose either." When Yongtai thought to himself, "I didn't lose. Doesn't that mean I didn't win?" However, when Yongtai didn't dare to say this out loud. He only asked cautiously, "In that case, can you return the things that I brought over to you earlier, Prefectural Governor?" Jianghu glanced at Wen Yongtai from the corner of his eye and didn't say anything. However, the intense look in his eyes scared Wen Yongtai so much that he immediately turned around and left without saying another word. Looking at Wen Yongtai's back, Jianghu smirked. "You want to take back the things that are already in my pocket? How naive." Jianghu rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. He had to report this matter to the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Otherwise, he would have to bear the consequences if trouble arose. Actually, whether it was the Imperial Sky Pavilion or the other Daoist sects, they didn't view Gu Zun's successor as an enemy. Instead, they treated him with indifference. However, the prerequisite was that Gu Zun's successor did not go overboard. He could enter the underworld, but if he messed up the order of the underworld, someone would have to intervene. Chu Xiu was definitely not a kind person. Moreover, Jianghu couldn't figure out his opponent's background from the few probing moves they exchanged just now. He was certain that apart from Gu Zun's successor, only a top-notch genius nurtured by the various sects could possess such combat strength at the spirit refinement realm. In any case, regardless of Chu Xiu's identity, it wouldn't affect Jianghu's merit if he reported the situation and got into trouble. As for Wen Yongtai, he didn't play any tricks when he returned to the Wind Smell Pavilion. He directly beat up Wen Donglai and packed up all the books in the Wind Smell Pavilion and handed them over to Chu Xiu. He was truly afraid. Jianghu, the prefectural governor, had stayed in Fenglin Prefecture for more than a decade. He was experienced and well-versed in his methods. Although he rarely fought, he managed to keep the martial arts forces in Fenglin Prefecture in line. What else could he do now that Jianghu couldn't do anything to Chu Xiu? Although he felt the pinch, he didn't want to follow in the footsteps of the Changhe sect and the others. Chu Xiu didn't expect Wen Yongtai to be so tactful and not make him waste any more time. After getting what he wanted, Chu Xiu couldn't be bothered to find trouble with Wen Yongtai. He immediately began to check the records of the Wind Smell Pavilion. He was pleasantly surprised to find the information he wanted in the records of the Wind Smell Pavilion. Chapter 1101. Although the Wind Detection Pavilion claimed that they were not anemophilia, in reality, what they were doing was anemophilia's work. The things recorded by anemophilia were very different from the things recorded by other sections. Ordinary sects would record some things, but they would only record things that were related to them. The things recorded by anemophilia, on the other hand, would be anything that they saw or heard. They might need it in the future. Even with Chu Xiu's mental energy, he felt dizzy after looking at the huge pile of things in the Wind Detection Pavilion for several days. However, he finally found some useful clues. According to the Wind Detection Pavilion's records, there was a huge earthquake in the Dilua Mountains more than 500 years ago. The area near Fanglin County was shrouded by a powerful force, and almost no one dared to enter. However, before the people could investigate, the eastern region's major sects, the Imperial Sky Pavilion, High Heaven Sect, and other sects made their move and headed to the Dilua Mountains. The martial arts world forces in Fanglin County could be said to be quite obedient. Under the Imperial Sky Pavilion's order, no one dared to take a step into the Dilua Mountains. The next day, the wave of energy disappeared and moved north. The Imperial Sky Pavilion only lifted the ban. When the others entered the Dilua Mountains again to investigate, they did not find anything. However, the part of the Dilua Mountains near Fanglin County no longer had any ferocious beasts or the like since then. Some wild beasts even avoided that area. Because the incident happened out of the blue, the Wind Detection Pavilion only gave a brief introduction. They even noted that it was the birth of a precious treasure. When the people from the lower realm came to the Daoist country 10,000 years ago, the Daoist country was still undeveloped. There were ferocious beasts and all kinds of strange dangers everywhere. However, even though it was strange and dangerous, there were also many opportunities along the way. Even after 10,000 years, some precious treasures and arcane realms would still appear in the world. It was unlike the lower realm, where people could only find some ancient relics and eat leftovers. The incident this time attracted so many major sects, so it was normal that people thought it was the birth of a precious treasure. Chu Xiu knocked on the table. It seemed that he still had to go back to the Dilua Mountains to have a look. Even though Chu Xiu had come to the celestial exalted plane through the spatial rift created by Dugu Weiwa and Ning Xuanji, no one could say for sure what was going on in space. Only heaven knew if the place he came from was the same as the place Dugu Weiwa and the others came out from. Moreover, if Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji were besieged by the Daoist people as soon as they came out, they must have searched through the place. Even if there was anything useful, it should have been taken away. However, Chu Xiu was still worried and wanted to take a look himself. Others might not be able to discover it, but that didn't mean that Chu Xiu couldn't. The close relationship between him and Dugu Weiwa had already been proven countless times in the past. For example, in the space where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji fought, only Chu Xiu could borrow Dugu Weiwei's power. Lu Changlu, the sect leader of the true martial sect, couldn't borrow Ning Xuanji's power. This time, Chu Xiu didn't let the 9 Phoenix Sword sect accompany him to the Dilua Mountains. If he encountered something this time, it would be difficult to explain with so many people. The 9 Phoenix Sword sect thought that Chu Xiu wanted to leave. Lin Yazi could be said to be shouting bitterly to stop Chu Xiu. Now that the 9 Phoenix Sword sect had offended almost all the martial arts forces in Fanglin County, they were mighty with Chu Xiu around. If Chu Xiu wasn't around, they would be besieged from all sides. It wasn't until Chu Xiu promised Lin Yazi several times that he didn't plan to leave that Lin Yazi let Chu Xiu leave skeptically. Chu Xiu had been to the place where the Dilua Mountains had been previously sealed. When he and Lin Fengwu left the Dilua Mountains, they passed by this place. However, they were in a hurry at that time, so Chu Xiu didn't know about this, so he didn't check it carefully. This place was a nameless town. Previously, there were some fierce beasts and other things in the Dilua Mountains, so the martial artists who came to the Dilua Mountains to hunt fierce beasts would camp here. After the energy fluctuation 500 years ago, it was difficult to see even wild beasts in the entire Diluo Mountains, so this town was completely deserted. Only some ordinary people who relied on collecting herbs for a living gathered here. After all, even wild beasts were rarely seen in this area. As long as they were in good health, ordinary people who had learned some martial arts could come and go here. Chu Xiu followed the town and entered the Diluo Mountains. He released all the energy in his body and raised the heaven sun, gazing at air to the extreme, feeling the remaining energy in the Diluo Mountains. However, the result was a little disappointing for Chu Xiu. There was nothing unusual here. Perhaps after 500 years, even if there was any energy left, it would have dissipated. At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head and said coldly, "Sneaky, sneaky, what are you looking at?" As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, a young man dressed in luxurious clothes appeared behind him. He had the cultivation of the true fire spirit refinement state, but under Chu Xiu's sun gazing at air, he could feel an indescribable aura exuding from him. It was even more terrifying than Jianghu, who was in the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment state. The young man smiled and said, "Friend, you're being unreasonable. The Diluo Mountains are not owned by your family. How can I be sneaky just by standing here?" The young man's appearance could be considered decent, but his expression was a little shifty. He had a funny little mustache, which gave people a very indecent feeling. "You've been following me since I entered the Diluo Mountains. Is this a coincidence? Where are you from? Who are you going to avenge?" Although Chu Xiu had not been in the Daoist heaven for a long time, he was still considered to be very talented. In such a short period of time, he had offended the people of an entire county and killed a lot of people. It would not be surprising if someone came looking for trouble with him or wanted to seek revenge. The young man chuckled and pointed to the sky. "Which way?" "The path to heaven. I'm Lu Sanjin, the Eastern Region Wayfarer of the Imperial Sky Pavilion." "Greetings, Brother Chu." Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed when he heard that. This seemingly indecent young man had a powerful background. He was even more powerful than Jianghu. Chu Xiu might not be familiar with the other Daoist sects, but Fanglin County was under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Almost all the ancient records of the major forces had descriptions of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so it could be said that they were very clear. The Eastern Region Wayfarer of the Imperial Sky Pavilion represented the face of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. There was only one person in every generation, and they were all disciples with outstanding potential. They roamed the Eastern region and monitored the counties under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, such as if there were any incidents in their territories and the prefectural governor's actions. Therefore, although a prefectural governor like Jianghu was very powerful, he still had to be polite to him. Otherwise, he would feel very uncomfortable if Jianghu reported him to his superiors. Now that the Eastern Region Wayfarer of the Imperial Sky Pavilion was looking for him, it was probably because of what he had done in Fanglin County that Jianghu had reported him to his superiors. "It's indeed a path to heaven. May I know why you're looking for me, Brother Lu?" Lu Sanjin squinted his small eyes and said, "It's nothing much, I'm just curious." Jianghu said that a prime venerate's inheritance has come to Fanglin County. As the Eastern Region Wayfarer, of course I can't ignore it, so I came to pay a visit. "May I know who your master is, Brother Chu? You might even be friends with the ancestors of the Imperial Sky Pavilion." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I've already told Jianghu that it's not convenient to reveal my master's inheritance before I defeat my opponent." Lu Sanjin chuckled and said, "Is it not convenient to reveal it or you can't reveal it?" Ever since Meng Xinghe helped Cold River City become one of the top Daoist sects, the low-profile Prime Venerate's successor has become famous. Although it's a good story, it has also attracted many swindlers who pretend to be the Prime Venerate's successor with evil intentions. Chu Xiu said coldly, "Are you saying that I'm an imposter?" Lu Sanjin took a step forward and said, "Brother Chu, if you're not an imposter, then tell me your master's inheritance." Chu Xiu was already clenching the formation-breaking sword in his hand. He said calmly, "Do you think I'll tell you just because you want me to? If you suspect that I'm an imposter, then find evidence to prove that I'm an imposter. Do you expect me to produce evidence to prove that I'm not the reincarnation of some evil god? It's not the behavior of a gentleman to be secretive. Lu Sanjin's small eyes glowed with a golden light, and a mystical rhythm surged around him. A murderous intent flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had thought that the matter would be resolved after he forced Jiangzong to retreat. He didn't expect Jiangzong to be so cautious despite his domineering appearance. He was afraid that something might happen to Chu Xiu, so he pushed him to the Imperial Sky Pavilion. The Imperial Sky Pavilion wouldn't have sent someone to Fenglin County just for such a small matter. However, Lu Sanjin, the Eastern Region advisor, happened to be in the vicinity of Fenglin County. Hence, the Imperial Sky Pavilion sent him along. Although Lu Sanjin seemed like a frivolous person, he was the most serious among the disciples in the Imperial Sky Pavilion. If it really didn't work, Chu Xiu would have to kill him and escape to another place. The biggest difference between the Daoist and the lower realm was that the experts from the major sects were very territorial. They wouldn't simply head to another sect's territory. Just when both sides were ready to fight, the sound of chanting scriptures with Daoist connotations suddenly rang out. The voice was clear, and it made one feel at ease. Deep in the Dilua Mountains, a young Taoist was riding a snow-white donkey. He was reading a scripture leisurely. When he saw Lu Sanjin and Chu Xiu standing in front of him, a bright smile appeared on his face. Brother Lu from the Imperial Sky Pavilion? What a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here. Brother, you look unfamiliar. I'm Lingzi from the Spiritual Treasure Temple. Nice to meet you. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.